story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here, coming at you live from my studio / RV dining room, located directly outside the city of Little Port-au-Prince, Ohio, the city formerly known as Springfield, Ohio. You know, the place where they're apparently eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. Anyhow, folks of the interwebs, once again, Double J here. I will be your pilot and navigator this evening for tonight's shenanigan infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. Got a real barn burner on deck for you folks tonight. An occult and or esoteric review of the 1987 cinematic masterpiece Dragnet, starring Dan Ackroyd and Tom Hanks. In tonight's show, starring Clint and Todd from the Third World Assassin YouTube channel. Greetings, gents.
Third World Assassin.
Hi. How are you, Captain?
Well, I appreciate y'all joining me here tonight. Like I said, the Third World Assassin YouTube channel, Clint and Todd here. I enjoy all the conversations we have over there on your channel. And folks, highly recommend checking out that YouTube channel over there. And these gentlemen discussing a wide-ranging topics of parapolitical, occult, and esoteric nature. That's where I often join them on the weekends, late on Fridays and Saturdays. These guys are burning the midnight oil talking about these topics. I always have some pretty awesome time joining you gents over there for some conversations. So looking forward to your input tonight here on the occult and or esoteric review of the film Dragnet.
Thank you.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Pumped and primed and ready.
I was going to say,
we sure enjoy your
introduction. Any other comments you gents want to make here before we get started?
Oh, excellent introduction, and we sure appreciate it when you come on Clint's show because you are a wealth of information, JJ, and you just bring the heat, the fire on every topic you cover. So I'm privileged to be here on your show doing a review of Dragnet. That was the coolest thing I even thought about doing. So thank you, sir.
Nice.
For the invite.
Absolutely. Thank you for the kind words, and I appreciate it. Clint, what else? What's new over there on Third World Assassin? I know you haven't been streaming as frequently as you have in the past.
I just I did do a live stream yesterday about the serious dark cults and the Masonic conspiracy of the Illuminati and Jesuits, and I lost some followers afterwards.
What'd you do? Tell them the truth? Oh, never tell them the truth, Clint. No. Never tell them the truth, Clint. No, if you want to keep subscribers, just tease them.
Yeah, I try not to sugarcoat stuff or get into.
Tell them what they want to hear, Clint. Just give them what they want to hear. Yeah.
But let's get to this movie.
Well, I'm glad to see you back from the communist flu that you got infiltrated by there, and I know you were down for the count there for a couple of weeks, so it's good to see you back.
Yeah, antibiotics that said if I strained my tendons they would break. That's like, what the hell? Jesus.
Whoa! They charge extra for that too. Yeah.
I feel like we haven't really been having any conversations. It's been a long time since all three of us have been together there on the Third World Assassin show there, right?
Yeah,
I was down with a jaw injury, and then I think you got some communist flu there yourself, Todd, for at one point.
Oh yeah, geez, Louise. It probably had nothing to do with any of this topics we cover. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
had nothing to do with that.
I'm glad we can all three be in good health here in conversation here this evening. So we are going to talk about an occult and esoteric review of the film Dragnet, and to introduce the film Dragnet and the storyline, I have a quick clip for us here, gents.
Okay, cool.
This is the city, Los Angeles, California. 465 square miles of constantly interfacing humanity, representing every race, color, creed, and persuasion that God, no matter how he is worshipped, chose in his infinite wisdom to deposit here in the cultural nexus of the Pacific Rim. Almost 4 million people work and play here, and like any other place, anywhere, there are those who have it and those who want it. Those who have it enjoy it, no matter how they got it. Those who want it can get it by attempting to better themselves in a sympathetic community populated by decent citizens cheering them on. Or they can try to take it the easy way. Because even in the City of Angels, from time to time, some halos slip. That's where I come in, doing my job to the best of my ability on a daily basis. I work here. I carry a badge.
Oh yeah, that's classic.
Excellent.
That was, yeah. I like to play that clip for folks at the interwebs to understand the. I know you all watched the movie recently. That's the introduction from the film, but to understand the scenes of Los Angeles at the time, it was it wasn't really a nice city, but it certainly had fewer homeless encampments and slightly less turds on the sidewalks than it does today.
And naked women, half naked women everywhere, and sunshine all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And man, it was a place to
nicer.
be. It's probably a place to be in '85.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These days,
I mean, I don't know. It still kind of had its kind of grimy kind of nature looking to it, though, didn't it? For the City of Angels, right?
Yeah, it did. It kind of run
City of
down, cheap paint on all these establishments. The donut hole, the paint looked all weathered, cheap.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Definitely
the
the
giant obelisk of
city-
LAPD headquarters looked pretty fancy, didn't it?
Oh yeah.
That did
I thought it
look
was
nice. That's
interesting.
probably the nicest part.
Well, the beginning, how he just shows all the religions. It's like, to be a Mason, you can be any religion. You just got to believe in God, quote unquote, and the idea that all the universal religions, it's a very Masonic thing.
Going over all the religions like that is.
Well, California is known as just the place where everything melts together. We love everybody here except if you don't love us or whatever.
Right.
How California works.
It's like,
Unless you're
about right.
You know that scene in The Mummy where the guy's like about to get eaten by the mummy or something? He starts pulling out all these religious objects and praying in all these different languages.
trying everything throw against it.
Yeah, that's it. The Masons, they're all about the universalism and stuff.
Every religion can be included, but you have to believe in a religion. Clint and I talk about this all the time. One of the reasons why it would probably be important to you that you have to believe in a religion is because that's how they can control you with their voodoo. You have to believe.
Yeah, they transmutate your belief into the belief that you're a god.
Your last show, JJ, you said you'd never seen the show The Believers.
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
Man, you need to check that show out with Martin Sheen, who playing the lead role, and man, that show will transform your. That was one of the tightest shows on how voodoo works that had ever been produced. Real sick production.
I appreciate the recommendation, Todd. To be quite honest with you, I'm not gonna lie to you though. I'm not sure if I want to get transformed at all.
I hear you, but it gives you a perspective into how much they knew and what they were putting out in the movies. That was the first one there was The Believers came out, and The Serpent and the Rainbow came out.
That's right.
You remember The Serpent and the Rainbow? And they were almost exactly the same time in voodoo, and that was showing you some of the inside stuff that they knew on that. But back to our movie, Dragnet.
I bookmarked it from before when you told me. I just totally forgot about it, so I appreciate you reminding me of that. Yeah, I don't remember this movie, but now we're on the topic of how you're saying there's a lot of truths in this film, which is really what we're talking about tonight, right? Where films are made, despite them being quote unquote fiction, there's an occult and esoteric understanding to a lot of these things, and just on its surface, stories are made based upon real life events because the people writing these stories are going to use information that's available in their brain holes to write these stories, and if they're aware of real life events, whether intentionally or unintentionally, they're going to include those aspects in storylines.
If you look at writing classes, pardon me, JJ, if you look at writing classes, they always teach you write what you know. If you want to write effectively, because you can seriously describe that, you're sitting right next to it. You can see why that makes sense.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's just more intentional, right? Like sometimes it's just, it's not so incidental, is what I'm saying. Films like what you're describing here with the Believers is sounds more intentional, is what you're describing.
Yeah.
Really, it's not to spoil the movie or anything like that, but had figures kind of like Hillary Clinton and ones you kind of heard are involved with voodoo.
Sure.
Hillary and Bill Clinton went to Haiti on one of their honeymoons and describe it in one of their memoirs about some of the most incredible things they ever experienced. Seeing the witch doctors do their shit on their honeymoon, I'm like, whoa! I mean, that's
that's
weird
where
stuff.
That's where they caught that Kuru disease. I want to mention about the movie. What I noticed, it took me 5 times to notice this because I was so stoned every time I watched it. So the priest in the movie, he is the Ordo Obco factor. He is the bad and the good, and the control of both sides.
In which movie?
In the Dragnet.
Dragnet. Right.
Spoiler alert. I totally agree with you there, Clint. And I would argue that's the reconciliation of opposites. One of the utmost ideals respected by the Process Church of the Final Judgment. So, and that is really the narrative that I think is being told here in Dragnet. But let me outline that storyline before we get too far ahead of folks in this narrative. For folks who haven't seen a film from 1987, they might get some spoiler alerts. And then this 1987 film, Believers, sounds like some spoiler alerts. They're doing ritual human sacrifice on solstices, huh, Todd?
Yeah, definitely. And then it's teaching you it's really showing you some of their practices in there. Like first time on, maybe in the 40s, black and white movies, they might have recreated some stuff, but that one was so close to how voodoo works. If you remember, do you remember when Haiti collapsed, when that story was Doc Duvalier?
That was the 90s.
Voodoo
that was the 90s.
In the 90s.
Yeah, I wasn't part of that.
The president of Haiti was like the head witch doctor.
Oh, yeah.
And supposedly he had jars with people's souls in it in his mansion when they raided that sucker. So Haiti was
culture, I believe it's, religion and politics are the same figure, right? Same figurehead.
Definitely. Kind of like Utah,
Utah.
Mitt Romney.
when I said I wasn't in it, I didn't mean the fall of Haiti. I meant the response to the earthquake in 2010 is what I was referring to, just to be clear.
Oh, yeah, that horrible disaster.
Yeah,
the Clintons swooped in on. They swooped in there.
Us Air Force cops were the first ones on scene for that.
Were you there? Did you see that?
Well, I was sitting in a bunker in DC coordinating it all. Does that count?
Yeah, you're probably getting live stories.
It's
horrible.
I was the guy in the hole coordinating the whole mission.
It's interesting. Yeah.
That was my job at the time, guy in a hole.
That sounds like the Alice in Chains song, Down in a Hole.
For example, I planned, coordinated, and executed the Air Force military police operations in support of the 2009 presidential inauguration, the first Barry inauguration. Barry Soetoro.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, the
wow.
That was my guy in the whole job.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was gonna say the Barry Soetoro, the master counterfeit birth certificate maker.
Exactly.
The Kenyan / CIA / Hawaii /
Well, I'd argue he's Indonesian /
Indonesian /
some recent
/ Order of Cincinnati. Society of Cincinnati.
Well,
I don't know.
To be fair, I've received emails from members of the Society of Cincinnati telling me that he was not invited in the society.
He was not invited because they're racist. Oh, no.
I found some of
Clinton
it
as well, supposedly. I've had emails of him and Clinton both. I don't know what that's about. I couldn't tell you.
How many How many black members of the Society of Cincinnatus are there that you found, JJ?
Including Clinton?
Including Clinton, yeah. The main black member.
To be honest with you, I'm gonna go with 0.
0. nothing, strange about that.
I'm not going to say they don't exist because there's always some aberrations to the normal rule, right? Because that's how Winston Churchill became a member. His maternal grandfather was an American, and he didn't have
Thomas Jefferson's slaves. One of Thomas Jefferson's slaves. No,
well, it's interesting you say that because Thomas Jefferson had a son with one of his slaves, and that son had a son, and he was Colonel Jefferson in the Union Army during the Confederacy. And then Thomas Jefferson raised his daughter's kid because his daughter and her husband lived in the White House, and she served as the first lady during Thomas Jefferson's presidency. Side note, none of this has anything to do with Dragnet, so I won't make it long.
Sorry,
guys. His grandson, Thomas Jefferson Randolph, was a colonel in the Confederate Army, so it was literally Jefferson versus Jefferson. The story of the
wow, that is wild.
So I'm not going to say it's because obviously the Union colonel was he was mixed heritage, right? Obviously, right?
But we don't know if Morgan Freeman or Jimi Hendrix were members of the Society of Cincinnatus. There's no confirmation on that part yet. No.
Well, to be quite honest with you, sir, you're describing the same individual to me, so I don't see. They're the same. What are you saying?
Right, those two. Those two separate things. Yeah.
So if I may offer a quick introduction, and I'll let you gents provide your introduction to your perspectives of the film. But what I see is you have 2 LAPD detectives, Dan Ackroyd and Tom Hanks, in the 1987 cinematic comedy masterpiece Dragnet, and they're investigating a series of crimes. They're working robbery, homicide, and LAPD. They're investigating a series of crimes that seem to be connected to an organization calling themselves the Pagans, and it turns out to be a cult, and they're doing an escalating series of crimes in the city in like a siege type of style, very Operation kind of Gladio like, if you will. And they're leaving these cards. So they're leaving these cards everywhere. This is the cult that is taking a siege over Los Angeles here in we'll presume the mid to late 80s. And in fact, there was a cult in Los Angeles that took siege of Los Angeles around the same time, it was doing a lot of hood rat shit, drug trafficking, murder, all sorts of criminal stuff. The same stuff we see in this movie, and it seemingly involved a major pornographer who was also a character in this movie, a major pornographer. And some of the other characters around this pornographer specifically, I think, tied directly into real life events. As we're saying, the things in films are often, like we said, based on real life events.
They're mirroring or they're putting stuff out. They're mirroring or putting stuff out you might not have tuned in on.
Yeah. So that's my brief synopsis of the film. Dan Ackroyd and Dan Ackroyd and John Hanks. No Tom Hanks are the detectives investigating the escalating crimes and activities of this cult. Yeah. So I'll turn it over to you, gents, for some descriptions.
Well, so the acronym, and Masons, I always use acronyms, as well as in the occultism, it's in Kabbalah, it's called Notariakon. And it's kind of like the Roy G. Biv thing for rainbows.
And when you say acronym, like the pagans, the way they do the pagans.
Yeah, I can't see the screen. It says people against goodness and normalcy. That's what
exactly
stands for.
Exactly. People against
goodness and normalcy.
Yeah,
goodness and normalcy.
But it's got the go to Mendez, right? That's the go to Mendez there on the card.
Yeah, it shares the similar symbol with the.
It's an anagram, and it's so whoever is putting this together for the movie has kind of an understanding of this is how cults actually will do things. This is something that would, like, Crowley would recommend.
What's that? Making your own sigil.
Making your own sigil and using an anagram, like take whatever you're doing and break it down into a word like that, and then spell words off of it, switch them around. This is stuff that cult people do because it makes the sigil more powerful
You mean like
by doing
GCD?
that. Yeah, like GCD.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
that
why I
picture
don't
you
have
have
to
of
call
the
you.
You
sand.
accusing me of being a Crowleyite, Todd? How dare you,
What's
sir?
that? Oh, you?
Todd's in
Yeah,
the
probably. No, you
picture
just
with,
have Crowley knowledgeable friends is all. So
No, that's a good point because
make some
there's
occult
obviously, like I
rejects.
said, right. Well, I think this is it's in your face with the activities of this card and everything like that. But like, I don't you never know that the cards like this aren't left at some scenes, right? The law enforcement's never going to be like, oh yeah, this cult left us a calling card, right?
Oh yeah, well, it reminds me of
Yeah.
the description of the smiley face killer thing that you've been investigating.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of a calling card, right? And it's a variation of this kind of calling card, but it's still a calling card.
That's one where you leave a permanent marker, like a spray painted object, instead of a card, because then it doesn't blow away.
Yeah, it's like on
Yes,
Home
sir.
Alone.
And here's the other thing with those crimes. The smiley face is only one of about a dozen symbols used by this cult in which to communicate, right? It was only focused on by the media in that aspect, right? So
there you go.
I don't want to get into some of the other details that aren't public that I've seen at some of these scenes that I've investigated in and around the Ohio, Kentucky region specifically. But I will.
Yeah.
I've said one before, which is relevant to tonight's conversation, and that is a swastika.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah.
Well, the smiley face killer thing.
What's that?
Oh, the smiley face killer thing again is turning out to be something more or less than what we're being told. They're feeding this stuff in movies and the media and stuff, but it's different from what it really is. It's this weird thing where they redirect your attention.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Todd, are you familiar with the Hollywood production of the Smiley Face Killers?
That movie with Crispin Glover?
Yes, sir.
I watched the movie.
Bret Easton Ellis.
What's that?
Bret Easton Ellis was the director and writer.
Was the director? Tell me about him.
Bret Easton Ellis? Oh, he's a strange fella. I think he wrote it too.
I was gonna say, for my the whole smiley face thing, it reminds me of that scene in the Spartacus movie that's synonymous with how the Illuminati, where the guy's like, I am Spartacus, and then the other guy says it too, and then they all say it. And so these killers, I believe, are possibly it reminds me of the Son of Sam, where the Son of Sam was like, oh, Sam told me to do it. And like it was alluding to a dog, which for the Dog Star Sirius, and that like a hive consciousness mind type cult. It's like when Charles Manson carved the swastika on his head, and then all the women carved it on their heads. They've got the group thought going on that they're all the killer.
on that scene of Spartacus, like you're talking about, what you're saying is that what this does is it allows the real Spartacus to hide. If everybody claims to be Spartacus, then the real Spartacus can hide, right?
Sure.
And then the operation can continue on with the leader. The leader's safe because everyone's claiming to be the leader or whatever.
That's a common spook tactic there, Todd. All have the same name, right? Everyone's name.
The octopus uses that same tactic, JJ. Squirts a big blob of black ink.
Yep.
In the water. So
like the octopus.
No, I'm talking about the octopus defense mechanism. Yeah,
like
the parapolitical octopus uses the same technique. Squirts a big blob of black ink into the water, and it muddies the whole thing so you can't tell what the fuck happened so it can escape.
Oh, yeah.
Just like the movie. That's kind of like within the Dragnet, the movie, they're escaping. They're always one step ahead of the law. Remember in the Dragnet movie?
Oh, yeah. Because they got insiders.
Sure.
Because
when
there's
I was
insiders.
saying the swastika was relevant to tonight's what was that, Todd? I apologize.
There's some insiders, pardon me. In the show, there are insiders helping the criminals get away with their antics. They're
like the scene, the guy after his nuts go in the drawer, and he's like, oh, right before that, he's like, I can get out of here in 5 minutes with my lawyer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking about the bodyguard to the pornographer, right? Which is
yeah.
I have a great real life example of who that guy's based off of. But
yeah,
I'm gonna start that by going over this film. We'll take a quick detour here to introduce this, because I was saying, like I said, that the swastika, this parapolitical infiltration of government aspects, this cult ritualistic sacrifices of humans, through this strong, powerful cult network are all represented in the film Dragnet. And I would argue this is all the process activities of the Process Church and around Los Angeles in the 1980s, and largely focused on, and I'll use him as a reference point tonight's discussion here, fellas, largely focused in around a man that I like to call Bob, and he called it himself this, by the way, Bob Cocaine Evans, the infamous Hollywood producer. And I'll do a quick tour of how to get back to him, the process, and Dragnet, and by making this example of how a lot of true stuff's told in film. This was kind of not really sold as a biopic, even though it was kind of a biopic, right? This movie Blow with Johnny Depp. It was y'all familiar with this one?
Yeah.
It was about the drug trafficker, right? This cocaine trafficker, George Young.
He's in California. Right? He's having a great time. He's surfing. He's dealing cocaine. It's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, he's cocaine trafficking for the Medellin cartel, right? Pablo Escobar and Carlos Slater, right? Carlos Slater is represented in this film. What's that?
The CIA.
Oh, for sure.
CIA and serious cartel member. I mean, just like the top of the cartels. Yeah, the Medellin cartel.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. They're represented in the film, right? So you have a character named as Diego Delgado. He's really Carlos Slater, and that's the guy you see getting George Young integrated into the Medellin cartel, right? So the Medellin cartel is generally just known as Pablo Escobar here, right? But he co-founded it with Carlos Leader, right? Carlos Leader is the guy. They're still shuttling this guy around the world to prison. This is still ongoing.
Oh, so he's their inside guy that's still alive that they're shuttling around everywhere.
Yeah, when you're talking CIA, it's probably this dude, right? So he's the only one who. Well, I mean, he's not the only one, but he's representing that film as Johnny Depp's buddy, you know, in the film, the character Diego Delgado, right? But it's a real dude, and they're telling a real story, right? And at the end of the film, Johnny Depp's character, again, George Young, he ends up dying out of prison. He eventually gets out of prison before his death. But he, at the end of the film, though, he gets popped again and goes back to prison for cocaine trafficking, right? And the people that set him up was his hairdresser buddy. Remember the Pee Wee Herman character, and his one of his pilots, a cocaine drug trafficker in the network out of Florida, right? Out of Florida.
What was his name?
Well, I think in the movie they called him Jack Stevens.
Okay.
But Jack Stevens, I would argue, is actually named Larry Greenberger. He was Carlos Leader's number one guy in America, right? So, you know,
flying stuff in.
George Young and Carlos Leader, as depicted in the film, they have a dispute and whatnot, right? Well, the dispute is because Carlos Leader's got a new guy. His name's Larry Greenberger, right? He's from a very wealthy family of Lake Okeechobee, right? So that's all depicted in that film, right? You know, again, the different characters, like the introduction to Dragnet and the introduction to tonight's shows, gents. The names have been changed, not necessarily to protect the innocent, but they have been changed. These are based on a true story.
Yeah,
totally.
So that dude, Larry Greenberger, you may have never heard his name. In 1987, he got identified in court with the Later situation. Later just got busted by the feds, and he gets identified as being Later's number 2 guy. Basically, the Medellin cartel's number 1 guy in America, because Young's back. You know, he's back in prison, I believe, at this point.
Yeah.
So anyhow, he's married. He was married to a lady named he got murdered. He got murked in 1988, right? About a year after he was identified in court documents. Again, he's just some kind of from I believe a wealthy real estate family of Central Florida, there, Lake Okeechobee, right? Well, you know, multi-generational wealth in the area. So everyone was kind of shocked in the area, like, oh wow, this dude's the number 1 cocaine trafficker in America for the Medellin cartel. It's kind of a shocking thing so a year later he gets murdered on his own porch. They just reopened the investigation. They're investigating his wife at the time he was married to. Her name was
JJ.
Lainey.
What year is this when he gets murdered? Do you know?
88.
Gotcha.
A year after he's identified as this huge cocaine trafficker. And I think, you know, again, back to Bob Cocaine Evans, he gets popped for cocaine trafficking back in 81 with his brother, right?
Yeah.
They don't do any time, but I'm just saying a lot of cocaine trafficking in this whole crowd, right? So, and then Bob Cocaine, this is 80. So in 83, Bob Cocaine, this dude's wife. So this is 88 when he dies, but he's married to No one knows he's a cocaine trafficker in 83. What I'm saying is I presume that this dude Bob was getting his cocaine directly from this dude, right? Because after he walks in 1980 for those cocaine charges. In 83, he's involved in the Roy Radin murder with this guy's wife. So she and Bob are dealing coke out in Hollywood, and Roy Radin from New York City in the Son of Sam situation, he's out there. He gets murdered in 83. It's called the Cotton Club murders, right? So this lady's information has all been but scrubbed from the interwebs. You can find some of the old articles, and the fact she's still in prison, and the new investigation out of Florida, but there's not a lot of information on her. But this is the Wikipedia, the source of all information on the interwebs.
Mm-hmm. Everything you can trust, of course.
right. But it's got a good synopsis here. One of Radin's film contacts at this time was film producer Robert Evans, a.k.a. Bob Cocaine, who was introduced to Radin by one-time drug dealer Karen Greenberger, a.k.a. Laney Jacobs, right? Because she was going by multiple names. So she and Bob and gang get popped for this. You all familiar with any of this narrative at all?
Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's been a minute, and you'd have to refresh me on it.
Well, yes, sir. So the very first hearing, they call Bob Cocaine Evans as their first witness. The state does in 80. This is 89, right? So this is after. So
is this New York State or where is this?
This is Los Angeles,
California.
Los Angeles. Okay. County.
So you got the murder of Radin in 83. They don't bring a first hearing about it until 89, right? Mind you, Charles Manson's friend Ira Reiner is the district attorney for Los Angeles at this time. Take that for what you will. So Bob Cocaine, again, talking about the process, right? Manson of the process, Cocaine, Bob Cocaine Evans being a major figure in the Los Angeles process scene, if not the leader. And so he pleads the fifth here in this hearing on the advice of his attorney, Robert Shapiro, right?
Yeah. OJ.
So
fame.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So Laney Jacobs had already been arrested, and charged with the murder, right? He was being called as a prosecution witness, but pled the fifth, and he was, as the article here cites, he was still considered a suspect, right? It says a judge Friday threatened to jail film producer Bob Cocaine Evans I'm contractually obligated to call him Bob Cocaine Evans. He declared that himself, that he would forever be known as that, and I want to respect a dead man's wishes.
I love cocaine so much, I shall forever be known as Bob Cocaine Evans.
Well, no, when he got busted and walked, right, he did some PSAs for his cocaine trafficking charge, right?
And then he apologizes for it. I shall never be known.
But he gave an interview like, "Oh, woe is me. I'll forever be known as Bob Cocaine Evans." I'm like, sold. So I don't want to.
Don't do what I did, kids, and make lots of money and have sex with underage girls. Don't be like me.
Well, you're thinking of Hillary.
Yeah, God.
Probably at least the creepy shit he did.
I want to say real quick, scroll back for a split second, just a side note. Or you were saying how the judge, he pleaded the fifth, but here it says the judge threatened to throw him in jail for contempt. That's proof that we don't have a constitution. But go on.
Sure. So, well, I mean, this whole thing was a shit show. Again, Charles Manson's friend was the prosecutor.
Wow. Yeah.
So Evans, who has not been eliminated as a possible suspect in the case, was called as the first witness at a preliminary hearing originating from the 1983 contract murder of wealthy New York theatrical producer Roy Radin. They were doing the Cotton Club together, the three of them, and that film later gets made later. But
is that Richard Gere? Is that Richard Gere?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. The gerbil, the guy with the gerbil in his butt.
The gerbil guy.
Yeah. So. That, Bob's directly connected to the Medellin cartel through that lady, right? Again, she's now being investigated for the murder of her husband back in '88. I just think the sequence of events that go on here are pretty interesting, right?
Oh yeah.
When she first got called in to talk to law enforcement, right? She was fleeing the country, and when she first got called in there in '88, she thought they were calling her about the death of her husband a few months prior, right? Not the murder from 5 years earlier that she had ordered the hit on, right?
Interesting.
So I just thought that was an interesting little detail. And, again, these things are told in stories, right? They're told, these are true stories, right? That are being told, right? So, and again, it's, 83 Radin gets killed in December. In June of that year, a different character surrounding Larry Flynt, the pornographer, gets murdered, and I'll get to him later in the tale. But you can see this is Landy Jacobs right here, 3 plead not guilty, and you can see this guy next to her. This is one of the hitmen, William Menser. William Menser, right here.
He looks like that driver.
There you go. So he was the bodyguard for Larry Flynt. He was the bodyguard for Larry Flynt.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So he's
holy shit.
He's the guy that gets his nuts shut in the drawer in the movie.
And what year is this? What year is this right here? What year is this right here?
This is 1988. They get charged in the Cotton murders.
Okay, boom.
Like October of '88, I believe, is the charges.
Because Dragnet comes out in June 27th of 1987. Exactly.
Right. Right.
Because I'm taking in dates and stuff of what's going on here.
Yeah. I'm glad you're tracking that, sir, because isn't that very interesting, right? Again, it's the sequence of events that are telling to me, right? It's the chronology of these activities. It's like I look at Dragnet as this. They're making a movie, kind of bragging about this cult, right? Like, oh, look what we do.
Yeah,
we do.
They're making fun of it and highlighting it, and it has all the elements. The bad guys are having fun, and the good guys are having fun, and fuck, it's all fun and games, kind of like the CIA is. You know, in JFK, my favorite part of the JFK movie, Oliver Stone, is where Joe Pesci says, "It was fun and games, man. We switch sides all the time. Fuck, everybody's having fun all the time. Yeah, if you're on the good side, the bad side, fuck, switch sides." Remind you of that bullshit.
Oh no, for sure. You know, that's a good way to look at it. That's a good way to look at it.
I think that was one of the biggest truths in that JFK movie, where Joe Pesci tells him, "It's fun and games, man. One time we're fighting the communists and we're against the fascists and fuck, we're putting everybody fuck." And so they have a good time. No, I'm talking about Joe Pesci plays David Ferry.
Yeah, no, I'm just joking.
What you're describing is essentially the hood rat theology and philosophies of the process cult, this cult network, right? You know, which David Ferry was not all that separated from exactly, right? Again, the attorney that he worked with and a fellow wandering bishop is who incorporated the Process Church. And is an incorporated religious organization in America.
And so the priest in the Dragnet movie, he's a perfect exemplar of, you know, he's the priest and he's the devil, head of the devil worshiping cult.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like, I like where your all's heads on that, but I have to ask you just to table that for a minute, gents, because I totally agree with you. And again, it falls right in line with the Process Church's reconciliation of opposites, which is one of their highest orders of ideals they seek to achieve. So, but if we may get back to the drug trafficking and murder here for a moment, fellas. And this fella right here that Clint astutely pointed out, it looks exactly like Emo Muzz, the character in the film played by Jack Halloran. I got a picture of here somewhere. Here's Emo Muzz. Like I said, Mike Menser was a murderer. He murdered more. He's in jail right now, in prison in California for life for multiple murders, not just Roy Raiden. But he looks just like this dude, doesn't he?
Yeah, they really.
That's not the guy that plays in Jaws, right? Is that the guy that plays the bad guy in
Jack
Jaws?
O'Halloran.
Okay, yeah, I've got him written down here.
Superman 2.
Oh, he was that guy.
Okay, yeah, he's not the guy that played in Jaws.
Yeah, so he got trapped in the mirror and sent into outer space.
I love that part of Superman. That was one of the baddest parts of movies ever made. You know, and you brought up Superman.
Just like William Menser, does he not?
Yeah, he totally does. Before you skip over that, you know, the director of Dragnet, Tom Mankiewicz, was the director of Superman. That has that.
I'm glad you picked up on that because there's a lot of Bob Cocaine Evans Superman connections that also connect to Dragnet. So I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yeah, I went and had to look at every movie that Tom Mankiewicz produced or was behind, and that kind of shed a light on a bunch of stuff once I looked at everything he produced. Tom Mankiewicz, the director, he you have to look at his origin is his parents. His father is a famous director before producer director. I don't know if he was a writer. He was more producer director. I forget, but his father was hailed as won 4 Academy Awards. Have the name written down. I don't remember if I can pull up the name of his father. That doesn't matter as much as Tom Mankiewicz in the Wikipedia. It talks about how he lived in his father's shadow. You know, his father was so incredible. He directed two movies. A Letter to Three Wives and About Eve were the two main movies that his father did that won him Academy Awards that made him put him on the map, the big time map. And what was weird researching Tom Mankiewicz, the director of this movie, is that he always felt like he couldn't live up to his father's, what his father had done. And
for sure.
When I looked at his father, it was said that his he was a son of German Jewish immigrants. In 1950, his father, after winning 4 Oscars for the screenplays and director of those two movies I just told you about, had been raised. So he was in the shadow of his dad the whole time. I was like, this is weird. Why did they put this in here?
Sure. And he's not officially credited with writing Superman. He's considered the script doctor, right? Because Mario Puzo, Mario Puzo, Bob Cocaine Evans' friend, couldn't write a script of his life depended on it.
They're doing too much cocaine. How can they write a script? They're just all coked out. They're like, I can't write. Hire a writer.
Apparently he wasn't very good. Apparently wasn't very good in the Bob Cocaine Evans production of The Godfather either, but they were buds, so Puzo kept working.
Interesting. I was
not a good screenplay writer, not a good screenplay. He was a good writer apparently, but not screenplays apparently.
Oh, yeah.
I was sure glad that you invited us on to do a Dragnet, JJ, because that movie you did with Nick and your other buddy, Pizza Man.
Yeah.
I'm glad we weren't reviewing that because that sounds horrible. Dragnet was okay. It was okay.
Oh, as far as the entertainment value of the film, I have to agree with you. Pizza Man is absolutely terrible.
Pizza Man sounds bad. Sounds bad. I don't know if I can take that.
I wanted to make the joke that that's how Superman broke his back. He didn't really fall off a horse. He owed Bob Cocaine Evans some money.
Dude, I wouldn't be surprised.
There you go.
So you know in the film when they're chasing down the pornographer's bodyguard / driver, the Mike or the William Mincer type fellow, Emil Muss, they chased him down to Muscle Beach, right? Because he was kind of a bodybuilder, right? That's this scene right here. So William Mincer was a bodybuilder, and in fact, his brothers. I don't have the exact reference for this. This is presumed to be his brothers. I forget where I learned this. And all information of William Mincer has now been scrubbed from the interwebs, basically, outside of his prison record, like one mugshot and some old newspaper articles.
I wonder if he's
this was Mr. Olympia and his other brother, Ray. These were his two younger brothers, Ray Mincer and Mike Mincer, both famous bodybuilders, professional bodybuilders. They both died within like a week of each other, too, in Brentwood, California.
What year is this? What year is this?
What year were they bodybuilders?
Yeah, right here, where they're higher.
Mike Mincer, I think he beat Arnold back in 1980, if I'm not mistaken, in Mr. Olympia.
Okay, because it looks like fucking something Arnold would be in there with.
Yeah, and the 80 Mr. Olympia, he plays fourth in a tie with Boyer Co. behind Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay, Chris Dickerson and Frank Zane. I thought he beat Arnold one time.
Well, Arnold instantly wins because his dad's a Nazi.
He's being rushed to
the Arnold in 79, looks like, maybe.
He's going to be president one day, yeah.
In late 79, he won the heavyweight class of the Mr. Olympia, but lost in the overall to Frank Zane. So it looks like he beat Arnold in 79. Yeah, they were big time in the bodybuilding community, though, for sure. Like, I used to be a personal trainer, and my old business partner is what they call a natural bodybuilder. I don't know how natural it is or whatever. When I say business partner, we owned I was a minority owner in a personal fitness gym that he owned. Well, he's the national champion, whatever. This is the IFBB, the steroid version. Theirs is supposed to be the non-steroid version. I'm not sure if that's accurate. But nonetheless,
I'm familiar with the bodybuilding world. Totally clean to win, yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm familiar with the bodybuilding world as a result of those things because I'm friends with a champion in the community, and he was the champion, like whatever 50 and older or whatever it was. It was one of my dude's fathers, or I'm sorry, his mom's stepfather. I'm sorry.
My friend's dad was a fucking big time weightlifter and followed Mr. Universe competitions.
Then he would know these names too. Then
working out.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, totally.
These are common household names in that community. The Mincer boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah. So anyone who's in that community probably would have heard of these guys. They had an odd. They both die a week apart from one another. I think. Again, from all my understanding, this is William Menser's two younger brothers, and again, they look a lot alike, nonetheless. But
yeah,
one dies
they
June,
definitely could be related.
The other one dies June 12th. No, it's supposed to. I mean, that's supposed to be his brother.
Yeah, I think they do look.
What's that?
I think they do look definitely related. The eyebrows, the nose.
They're all getting their shots from the same. Their drugs from the same people. Yeah.
Yeah, he's their older brother. Those two, they're supposed to be 2 years apart, but nonetheless, that when they go to the beach to bust Emil Muzz in the film, I think that's a nod to the fact that William Menser and brothers were all bodybuilders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So William Menser was deep in the occult network out there. Maury Terry calls him Manson 2 in The Ultimate Evil,
right?
And Ed Sanders identified him as being a romantic relationship at some point in time with Mama Cass.
Wow, that's so wild.
Yeah, I believe that was Ed Sanders that identified that one. But yeah, so he's definitely involved in that same process cult network, right? And again, that was the late 60s. We're talking about the early 80s, but it's the same people all largely surrounding Bob Cocaine Evans, right? And today, William Menser sits in a California prison for multiple murders, like I said, but the information on that out there is, very slim to none, right? As far as that stuff goes. So 83, Raiden dies in December. This dude dies. I'm going to get us back to the Dragnet stuff here, fellas. Raiden dies in December. This dude dies in June, poisoned allegedly by Larry Flynt's brother-in-law.
Whoa.
Larry Flynt had hired him to murk Bob Guccione, Frank Sinatra, Hugh Hefner, and somebody else. He gave him $1 million check to go murk. This guy was involved apparently in the JFK assassination. At least some sort of tangential involvement.
Never even heard of him. What's his name again?
Mitchell Warbell III. He used to run during the Atlanta child murders of the associated activities around the process in the early 1980s, preceding these activities in Los Angeles. In the mid to late 80s, they were operating in and around the Atlanta child killings down there. And Mitch Warbell just happened to run a paramilitary training camp in around the Atlanta metro area at the time. But he was involved in training anti-Castro Cubans, back there for the whole Bay of Pigs thing, right? A lot of that was uncovered when his buddy was called in front of, this guy, Jerry Patrick Hemming, was one of his underlings for many years. And he actually served as a consultant on Oliver Stone's JFK.
Oh, perfect.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Mitch Warbell was poisoned in Los Angeles after meeting with Larry Flynt about a month after Larry Flynt gave him $1 million check to murk all of his, for whatever reason, Frank Sinatra, but I would connect him to the same.
Larry Flynt paid him to go get rid of people?
Frank Sinatra, Bob Guccione, Hugh Hefner, and I forget the fourth party.
I know that Frank Sinatra is a big Satanist.
That is too weird. That is too weird.
For sure. Bob Guccione and Hugh Hefner, I could see that too, right?
Yeah, the bunny, the symbol of Tammuz.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring Tom Mankiewicz into his associations with his movies into this topic real quick. Because if you go through his list of movies, one of the ones I didn't write down, but I thought I better mention, one of the things he produced in the late 60s was Moving with Nancy, which was Frank Sinatra's daughter, who was real popular.
Oh,
so he was producing this fucking TV show or movie. I think it was a TV show. But doing that, he got introduced to Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and all the other Rat Pack was on the set, right? So Mankiewicz is hanging out with the Rat Pack. And
which I would argue they're all around the same community. Not only Sammy Davis, a Satanist. It seems, Sinatra was married to Mia Farrow and was on the set of Bob Cocaine Evans and fellow Processi and Roman Polanski's
Rosemary's Baby.
They're all hanging out. Right?
Sammy Davis is also Knights of Malta, which is the army of the Vatican. So he's
so the Wikipedia kind of smoozes over all that. Wikipedia smoozes over the how he on the set of Moving with Nancy, he was working with Frank Sinatra, all these other characters.
Yeah, but
Nothing suspicious
back,
there.
it all goes back to this guy here, right here, Todd. Bob
This guy.
Cocaine Evans. When we're talking the Cult
Yeah,
Network,
yeah.
we're talking Los Angeles. It's this guy, and again, he's commemorated in so many films. You may have never heard of the man, but his old pal George Hamilton did a satirical version. This character that's over tanned, greasy haired character that George Hamilton always played. That was his parody of Bob Cocaine Evans, his buddy.
Huh.
They were actors in Hollywood together for many years.
That was weird.
Bob made a lot of careers, not the least of which was Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, that's where that first
influencing
movie.
serious people.
Remember that first movie Dustin Hoffman was in, where he was like some teenager who banged somebody's mom or something.
The Graduate.
Yeah, that's
The Graduate. But anyway,
you'll see Dustin Hoffman right here dressed as Bob Cocaine Evans. He plays this film producer that's going to fake a war, this whole war situation and Wag the Dog. Well, that's Bob Cocaine Evans right there. You're looking at.
My friend tells me you got to watch that movie. You never watched it.
Oh, it's really good.
My friends tell me you got to watch that. Man, tell you how everything works. I'm like, yeah, it does really. And then you've been saying the same thing.
Woody Harrelson goes after this fat chick and gets butchered.
but before we get too far down the line, we got to list some Tom Mankiewicz movies. Superman.
Well, yeah. Well, hold on. I'm driving us back there right now, Todd. Just give me a second. Here.
Okay.
I can't not highlight Bob Cocaine Evans. It's what
no, please do. Yeah, because he's on the screen too now.
Well, that's the Dustin Hoffman version of him, right? But
I
would argue
version.
This film is really about Bob Cocaine Evans and Henry Kissinger's lifelong friendship. They were very tight together. No one could explain it. I would argue the De Niro character represents that. And De Niro, another man whose career was made by Bob Cocaine Evans.
Yeah.
In Wag the Dog here. In Wag the Dog.
Well, De Niro, I think De Niro represents the Kissinger friendship between him and Bob Evans. Right.
I got to go watch that now. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt if they were like Interpol or KGB or something.
Well, it's certainly possible. There's a lot of spook activities when you're talking the process. So
yeah, Kissinger is worldwide, man. He's everywhere. He's
a pretty
everywhere,
big
nowhere, all at once.
Fellow.
Totally.
So in the film, driving back here to the film, we have the stars. We'll get to the director. I do appreciate your notes there, Todd, because you picked up on a few things that I have as well, but. There is obviously some occult aspects and understandings or belief systems from the director and writer, Tom Mankiewicz, who co-wrote it with Dan Ackroyd here, the film Dragnet, that is. But there's obviously, Dan Aykroyd's obviously got some occult backgrounds to him, right? He's very open about his spiritualist belief systems. Even in the film, I think in the film Ghostbusters, he's got the Ray's Occult Bookshop, right? This is throughout all the Ghostbusters films, he's always running this bookshop in New York City, right? Yeah, he's occult books, right? Well, I would argue that Dan Aykroyd based that upon real life experiences that he had by visiting the Warlock shop owned by Herman Slater.
You've got to be right. You've got to be right. Wow.
Yeah. Later moved to the Greenwich Village area of Manhattan. That was in Brooklyn Heights. Later moved to the Greenwich Village of Manhattan in 79, right, where it would be called the Magical Child until I believe the late 90s, early 2000s when it finally closed. Yeah. But Herman Slater dies in 1992, I believe. And according to a 1996 letter signed by David Berkowitz, given to the witness and signed by the author Maury Terry there, Herman Slater was a member of the Process Children cult. They're out of Entremont Park, the same. So I think Ackroyd is very familiar with that scene, right? Because he's basing that whole bookstore, in my opinion. What do you got? There?
Oh, yeah. Well, like Dan Aykroyd in modern times, he claims that he's seen men in black and talks about UFOs and has this search for UFOs and so on.
I think he has famous relatives that are spiritualists too from the turn of the century. He's related to famous occultists.
Yeah, someone that knew Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, apparently, from my understanding. It's
which is about as close to the occult and that as you could get at the time. But spiritualists, everybody was into table rapping and spirit communications at the turn of the century. We're almost back there again with your smartphones. You got kids pulling up Ouija boards on their telephones. You got smart dust in the air. You got electromagnetic energy that can sense you before you even get there. Computers integrating with everything. But we're going to a magical age.
Sounds like
Quick.
a Philip K. Dick nightmare, Todd.
Yeah.
It does. It's gonna be horrifying.
So, I mean, there's a lot to be said probably for Tom Hanks, but he probably has some occult belief systems, right? What do you all think?
I think
I didn't want to research Hanks because I saw so much with Mankiewicz. I'm like,
This
I
was an
can't even
early
go
film he
into
did in a made-for-TV movie he did in '82 called Mazes and Monsters, where these teenagers are playing. It's kind of the early onset of the Satanic Panic.
I remember that one.
You remember this one? These teenagers are playing
Yeah, it
Dungeons
was
and
horrible.
Dragons.
Horribly produced. The special effects were like cheesy from the 80s. Like the worst
early
kind of low
80s,
budget.
terrible. Like that live action
Dungeons and
Spider-Man
Dragons.
in 1980, right?
Yeah, very bad.
That kind of terrible cinematography. Well, here
kind of like Pizza Man, yeah, but maybe worse.
Well, it's not. I would say it's slightly better than Pizza Man.
Or maybe slightly better. Yeah.
Let's share the disaster with all the folks of the interwebs. I have a clip from this film. I don't know if Tom Hanks has a very deep occult or esoteric belief systems in this world, but he certainly was assisting in kind of the same kind of trope as what I'm describing here with the film Dragnet is, they're kind of joking about these things. We're like, and creating kind of chaos around it.
It's really funny.
Yeah. One of the houses that was in Dragnet was also in the Burbs. I read in the footnotes of the IMDb.
Interesting.
Well, in this one, this is again 82.
The Burbs would come out in one year and a half after Dragnet. By the way, I went and looked that up.
Yeah,
that's creepy. That's a creepy film. So this film again. So this is kind of the early onset of the Satanic Panic stuff, and Tom Hanks has obviously helped stoking that fire with this, in my opinion. But you all can share with me your opinion after this clip. Let me hit play here.
Robbie! Pardue! What are you doing? Going to join the Great Hall.
You can't. It's a trap.
I have spells. I'm going to fly.
Yeah, that's how he also turned big.
Harry Potter over there. Yeah.
Right. He's going to take a nosedive off the World Trade Center towers because some Dungeons and Dragons game told him to fly.
Took some fry, yeah.
I didn't know that's where he was.
Took some LSD with
that was the South Tower
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, it's interesting how he's some of these people.
I'd say he makes a mark. I'd say he makes a mark right there. An indelible mark on public consciousness. You know how they typecast all these actors? You can watch the same person play this exact same role over and over again. Once you've established you can do that, Hollywood keeps bringing you back. In Tom Hanks's case, boy, he became famous because I was going to mention that at the first of this.
Yeah,
he became famous on that Bosom Buddies, and that really made him huge in the 70s. Fuck it, it's so funny. He's that funny guy. By the time Dragnet comes around, you're like, wow, Dan Ackroyd, this guy, how could it fail?
Well, that's how him and Ackroyd met. Ackroyd's wife was his co-star on that show.
On Bosom Buddies.
Well, it said that in the IMDb,
the blonde girl.
He originally wanted John.
That's
what's
right.
His name? John Belushi to play the part, and then a guy that was supposed to play the part of the guy who didn't want to play the part was also supposed to play the part of Big, but
there's a whole weird, horrible element to this thing because as I started looking into the movie and stuff, I looked into Tom Hanks, and all of a sudden last week the story was breaking, or I was seeing stories being fed to me that Tom Hanks's daughter was telling her story about how she had the very worst childhood you could ever imagine. And Tom Hanks all last week was apologizing, and he quote said, "I'm the worst person that ever lived." The worst father.
Yeah,
Did you guys see this story?
Well,
no, I didn't see that. But
I'm like, what in the hell's going on here? Yeah.
Well, right around
I bet he's got some demons or skeletons in that closet, right?
It sounded like it. This week he's like, "I'm the worst person that ever lived." I'm like,
well, here, check this out, Todd. Right around
worse than Hitler. Yeah.
Well, right around the pandemic, he was pictured with a possible ankle bracelet, and that he was it's like every movie he was on after a certain point, he was only on it in a digital way, and they were saying that he was in Italy and that he had committed some kind of sex
I remember
crimes.
hearing all these stories.
Yeah, like, and then he was a huge
That he'd
that's why-
taken up residence in Italy, in Greece, because they don't have child trafficking laws over there, and
yeah,
there's that whole undercurrent of, since the Trump administration come in, how they're tracking down the pedophiles, the QAnons.
Yeah, I mean,
They're
there's a
arresting these
lot of that
people
stuff
in
around
secret.
Hanks. Who knows what's real and what's not? I mean, again, like I said, the guy certainly looks like he's got some skeletons in his closet. So, what do y'all think about the Tom? And again, it makes sense. We're talking about cult folks bragging about a cult. So, I mean, why not, right? What are your thoughts on Tom Mankiewicz here, the director and co-writer?
Tom Mankiewicz, I gotta get on this. The movies he made: Superman, Live and Let Die, Diamonds Are Forever. Two of the most incredible movies ever made. Those two James Bond films. Man with the Golden Gun, three James Bond films. Three of the best with Roger Moore. Diamonds Are Forever had Sean Connery. But The Goonies, War Games, Batman, Tales from the Crypt. So he's making these James Bond movies, like you were saying earlier, JJ. They brought him in as a script doctor. If a movie isn't doing good, they bring this guy in. He can schmooze the script over. I'm going, wow, this is weird. So in his biography on Tom Mankiewicz, I caught this. He says, here's the interesting part about him. He was a graduate of Phillips Exeter Academy from 55 to 59 and Yale College from 59 to 63. He majored in drama at Yale.
Let's just take a moment out there, Todd, if I may interject, with Phillips Exeter Academy. For folks of the interwebs who are not familiar with this institution, the King of Jordan, a number of other high-ranking politicians, industrialists in this country have all gone to that school. The only reason I know the King of Jordan went there is because that's a different story altogether. But it's I'm just off the top of my head. There's a number, Roosevelt's and all sorts of folk that go to this private academy there in Western Mass.
Where is Exeter Academy? Do you know, JJ?
Western Massachusetts.
Western Massachusetts. So Boston,
also,
Yale.
I believe.
Yale's in Boston.
Also, the fact that he went to Yale, because there's not just the skull and bones there, but there's the scroll and key and the wolf's head and the other
if you caught, I said he majored in drama at Yale. If you don't think Skull and Bones is interested in who's majoring in drama,
well, he might have been scroll.
1963. Yeah, he could have been any one of those.
That's a good point. You got Hollywood actor Paul Giamatti. He's a member of Skull and Bones. You familiar with Paul Giamatti?
Well, it's interesting you said that one guy was involved with the JFK thing because
can't stand him.
Senior was part of the security at JFK, and
so I'll go on about Mankiewicz. His mother unalived herself in 1958 when Mankiewicz was 16 years old.
Okay.
So there we have this trauma of losing your mother to unaliving herself.
Yeah.
That would traumatize you, I think, slightly.
Sure.
Whew. Holy schmoly.
Well, it's possible. Because sometimes the people that are connected to the mob and stuff, they may appear to have unalived themselves, but they may have been hit.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you just never know.
Well, when you're talking about the process, gentlemen, and this whole cult network associated with it, well, it's again, we've already talked about a lot of murders.
I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
hanging is a favorite one of theirs. Unaliving themselves. In 1961, he was hired as a third. Here's an interesting fact. He was hired as a third assistant director on the Comancheros, a film starring John Wayne and Lee Marvin.
Okay.
Which was filmed in Monument Valley, Utah.
That sounds like
the set of this movie, and on the set of this movie, John Wayne told Mankiewicz to remove his John F. Kennedy button. Can you picture this? John Wayne's
I'm
wife.
33rd degree
Hey,
Mason.
mister, you better take that John F. Kennedy button.
How far away is that
Anyways,
from Kanab there, Todd?
That's a little ways. That's down there close enough, an hour. You
Well, I mean,
probably
'cause
drive
Kanab,
there from an hour.
Kanab, the Process Best Friend Society there sits on an old movie ranch today. So I don't know if it's
Yeah.
the same old West movie ranch we're talking here, but it'd be interesting.
No, it's all. It is definitely all. I'm sure that it's all connected. If they're making a movie there, it's probably right there. But
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like, there's a lot of Western shot there. So what you're describing is a movie that was most likely shot where the Process Church is now headquartered.
I thought the Wikipedia entry was interesting because they had to make mention that John Wayne was offended by his John F. Kennedy button, kind of making reference to the fact that some people didn't like John F. Kennedy. You know what I mean? How they're giving cover to the CIA for probably offing the president.
Well, Kennedy
So some
was,
people, even John Wayne, didn't like the president because they rewrite history.
Yeah, well, to put this in perspective, why somebody might hate John F. Kennedy is he signed America into Department Publication 7277, the Disarmament Act of the UN. So he signed a paper that unconstitutionally disarmed America.
Yeah, he had that, and he was doing all kinds of things, trying to get the troops out of Vietnam. He didn't like the shit they were doing in Cuba. So he was on a big.
I know a guy that didn't like Kennedy. His name was Mitchell Warbell III.
Yeah, you were talking about him a minute ago.
And he was murked. He was murked by Larry Flynt and gang. And the guy that, when I said, like I said, who I think actor Dabney Coleman plays that pornographer there in Dragnet. I think the pornographer could be an amalgamation of a number of characters, but most certainly Larry Flynt, right? You know, the guy
definitely,
that Mitch Warbell.
Definitely. Larry Flynt, Hugh Hefner.
Was there any other strange things about Tom? You've identified some interesting aspects of Tom Mankiewicz's past.
Just real quick, in his own his autobiography that he collaborated on, it was published University Press in Kentucky. He claimed that he lost his virginity to Joanne Abria while making the Comancheros. He also had affairs with actresses Dorothy Provine, Susie Kendall, Carol Lily Tuesday Weld.
Ooh, did you just say Tuesday Weld?
Yep.
Not only
Diane
is she my favorite character in this cult network. Well, pardon me, Todd. Not only is she my favorite character in this cult network, I'm doing a Tuesday Weld show on Monday, the 14th, on this coming Monday with the Occult Rejects. So
excellent.
I'm glad you brought that to my attention. Thank you. It's a great connection to this cult network with Tom Mankiewicz.
Yeah, he bragged about it. Hey, I had sex with that girl when who knows how old he is, telling this goddamn stories. Diane Cilento, Elizabeth Ashley, Gene Simmons, not the Kiss bassist, I hope. No.
What I'm hearing is the Kiss bassist. That's what I hear you describing right now, at least in my head. That's what you're describing.
Gene Simmons.
Stephanie Powers and Margot Kidder.
Oh, there we go.
So he was banging Margot Kidder on the Superman set, I guess, according to him.
Wait, that's that lady that went crazy?
Yeah.
I think she did have some problems.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
They probably slipped her some kind of Mickey of something that.
No.
Okay, here we go. Hold on. Let me finish this, and then you can go on, Clint. He was also a very close friend to Natalie Wood and Jerry Moss. He co-wrote and directed the pilot Heart to Heart with Robert Wagner, husband of Natalie Wood, as you know.
Yep. Probably murderer.
And boom, that was the last kind of stuff that I wanted to mention on Mankiewicz, because that was really weird.
That was great stuff. I appreciate that. Tuesday Weld is by far my favorite aspect of that. No offense to the rest.
I knew you'd get it. I knew you'd catch that. I caught that because I was going to ask you: Is Tuesday Weld the same
Tuesday Weld
person connected to the Society of Cincinnati? Because I started looking at. I started looking at that. I'm going. Didn't JJ say Tuesday Weld was connected to the Society of Cincinnati?
Big time.
Weird.
Yeah.
Lars Anderson, the son of Civil War General Nicholas Longworth. I was going to ask Anderson. I was going to ask you about that, JD, but that's probably a whole nother show. You know, I mean, I don't want to sidetrack the Dragnet thing. I just started seeing that Society of Cincinnati's connection. Now I'm seeing that everywhere.
Well, it should be identified. It probably is another conversation, Todd, but there is a lot of these cult networks we're talking about where the membership is of these society families, if not direct, possibly members, right? Like folks like Jack Parsons, for example.
Yeah.
He falls into that category. Process church member John Waters. He falls into that category. His third great grandfather was the Surgeon General of Maryland during the wars of 1776. So,
also,
you're not far off with the Society of Cincinnati stuff, Todd. What you got there, Clint?
What's like so Jack Parsons and all these other people? A lot of these people, they're not just for the audience sake. Typically, they're members of many secret organizations. You know, the Temple of Set, the OTO, this process that you're talking about. This seems like because the more what the Masons call them all is these things are all to them. It's the secret college. It's the secret fraternal orders. The mystery schools, if you will. That's the literal term for the different religions is the mysteries.
Right. Well, and before this conversation, before this, thing ends here tonight, I wanted to bring up that in 87 and 88, a number of high level. I'm going somewhere. No, I'm saying before this show ends.
We're not ending yet. We got time.
Good. Oh, good. Before this show ends, I wanted to bring up at this time period, a number of religious organizations are starting to come under the spotlight. Jim Baker and Jim and Tammy Baker and Jimmy Swaggart, the two highest level right-wing Christian powers preachers or whatever, televangelists, are being brought down right about the time this movie's coming out or right around that same time. So the movie's contributing to a bad light. It's showing anybody that's paying attention that these televangelists, there's these fake preachers around. Hollywood is kind of letting you know there are these fake preachers, because Hollywood is opposed to they're left wing, and in those days the preachers are on the right wing. The PTL, the PTL. I wanted to put this out there. They were bringing in $158 million a year in 1987. The PTL.
Oh, they said
Jim
the
Baker.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to bring up just a real quick.
Jim Baker.
That amount of money. Do you know who brings in more than that today? The Process, the Best Friends Animal Society.
Whoa,
they launder all the money. I wanted to bring up the Reverend Jesse Jackson and the other Reverend. What's his name? I just said it earlier, but I can't.
James Brown.
Jimmy Swaggart.
No, the Pat Buchanan. But they're
Pat
both
Buchanan.
high reverends.
He's not a reverend. He's a politician.
33rd degree Masons. Well, I might be thinking of, but there's multiple high reverends that are also high degree Masons. And the
you talking about Billy Graham?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, he was pictured. With the
Billy
Pope.
Graham seems like he'd be a Mason. I don't know that for a fact, but it seems like it.
He was pictured with the Pope doing. It's hard to shake my own hand, but doing one of the Masonic handshakes with the Pope. And that
well, apparently him and Jimmy Carter were tight. So Carter was a high-ranking Mason, right?
I'm pretty sure.
No, he was the head Mason at Georgia before he was the president.
Oh yeah.
When he got attempted assassinated there in May of 79.
Pardon me, gentlemen. I'll be right back.
In a parking lot in the City of Angels there in Los Angeles, he apparently went and hid back at Camp David and called Billy Graham to come save him.
Interesting.
Billy Graham's attorney, his lifelong attorney, that man's son, the attorney's son, was murdered in a ritual human sacrifice by by what is known as the Kentucky Vampire Clan, folks that I got way too familiarized than I ever cared to upon stumbling across these matters in the aftermath of their crimes and most of their cult activity. But when I say stumbled across it, this is the cult of vampires that were from Murray, Kentucky, circa 1997. Drove to Florida and murdered this one cult member's parents. So that one cult member's parents happened to be Billy Graham's attorneys son and his wife.
Oh, that's very
It was their
interesting.
daughter.
It seems like quite the coincidence for it not to be
Targeted.
Yeah, specifically
Right.
targeted or paid off to do so.
Yeah, I inadvertently encountered these things through the cult leader. The head vampire was a foster child at my dude's cousin's house. They were his foster family at the time of the
Jesus.
murders. Yeah,
That's pretty wild.
yeah, they were ministers, preachers, or whatnot. Baptist, I believe. I'm not good with these things. But they were obviously trying to save the young man in the horrible situation he'd been born into. The vampire leader that is Rod Farrell, who believed he was a 500-year-old vampire, but he was definitely something generational he was born into. I believe is how my understanding. But you know where they went to after they murked Billy Graham's attorney's son, right? Then they drove to New Orleans, worldwide headquarters of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, according to their corporate documents, still to this day.
Oh yeah, New Orleans is notoriously occult with its pagan festival of whatchamacallit, the what is that famous festival that with all the
Mardi Gras?
Yeah, Mardi Gras. It means the fat, to eat the fat. The Catholics do the same cult practice of engorging in fat foods. They call it Fat Tuesday, I believe it is. And Mardi Gras is fat and Tuesday. I can't remember which word's which, but in French it's it just shows that what I was bringing about that picture of that guy with the pipe, at the table, that looks like the Bob
Dobbs.
Yeah, so their belief is to engorge in laziness and sex. That's what their belief in is. Yes,
They call it slack.
Yeah, but that was, in the 80s.
Well, that's what
when
the
you're
Mardi
coming
Gras
across this information. No, but I'm saying when you're coming across this stuff, the way that would be sold to you if you came across a book or publication, it's a joke. They were just it was a joke.
It's the same reason they use the chaos symbol for these same cult networks, Todd, and the same reason they use it in the smiley face killings. It is all a joke to them.
Yeah.
Well, to break it together for Todd, it's like the Catholics are celebrating Fat Tuesday simultaneously as the same day as Mardi Gras. Both groups are engorging in food and engorging in sex, and that the if you read the Satanic Bible, it says specifically that they're to engorge the senses or whatever. They believe in the belief
indulgence.
Indulgence. That's
indulgence in the physical in the physical realm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's this in the East they abstain. You know how in the monasteries they don't have a lot monks. Priests go to meditate and eat less food and meditate on God. In the West, the magicians they're taught to indulge. That's why
I was bringing up Fat Tuesday, because on Fat Tuesday the Catholics all engorge themselves with as much food as they can.
So it's kind of the same kind of ritual, same kind of magical ritual.
Well, Mardi Gras means literally Fat Tuesday. In the French, but because it's like how this priest is he's playing both sides of the field. They're both the occult
on the movie,
right?
Yeah, on the movie. Mm-hmm.
Well, in real life as well, they're both doing the same rituals with different words and meanings.
I liked
Dabney.
Just me real quick, Todd. This is what I mean though with the priest, though, that this is the great example of the Process Church's concept of reconciliation of opposites. This dude who's coming to Los Angeles to save Los Angeles from all this filth and is openly fighting the pornographer, the Dabney Coleman character that I think represents Larry Flynt, like I was saying. He's openly fighting him in public, but they're behind the scenes, they're working together, right?
Yeah, he pays them the Larry Flynt character pays that guy $1 million check or something in the movie to
$1 million check, like that Mitch Warbell check, right? That $1 million Mitch Warbell check that Larry Flynt gave him, right? Very striking. Similar $1 million. Not a lot of $1 million checks rolling around the 80s with these guys.
It's like a newsie.
Larry Flynt like character.
How else can you generate news? Definitely. You know,
Well,
it's funny. Larry Flynt gets
isn't it?
almost assassinated. If you remember, they made a
I just think
movie
it's-
about how incredible this. Well, he almost got killed because he was for free speech and pornography.
Oh, I think that I think I would argue all that's bullshit as well, Todd. The Process Church likes to fight out free speech cases in Hamilton County, Ohio, the city of Cincinnati, for some reason.
Free speech when it suits them, but not for you. Yeah.
Well, I would argue pornography is not free speech, but the
No, I hear you.
the long and the short of it is, I find it strikingly odd that they're going to highlight $1 million check in this film after the infamous Larry Flynt $1 million check. So I'm glad you pointed that out there, Clint. So the reverend's also serving as the cult leader of the pagans, right? And the pagans kidnapped this young gal in the film that Dan Ackroyd and Tom Hanks saved, correct? Isn't that the case?
Yeah, Dan Ackroyd de-virginized her at the end of the film.
Right.
What do they call her? The Virgin
Connie
something?
Swale.
The Virgin Connie Swale. Yeah, he always references her.
That was her name, Connie Swale. So if I may take we may take a brief interlude here, fellas. I got a minute long clip from the official music video. What 1980s comedy would not be complete with an official rap song music video sung by the stars of the film?
Yeah,
the horror.
I heard it
that morning in the City of Angels. On this particular occasion, we happened to witness a pagan ritual in progress. See that, Streamek? We're just in time. We have stumbled into a major crime.
They got the girl off right. Now that's not nice. I think she is the subject of a sacrifice.
Buddy, we're putting this party on ice.
But don't you know we really ought to read them their rights?
Read them their rights. Read them their rights.
Well, I'm here tonight to rap about your rights. Cause right now you're in trouble. You don't have to say nothing at all. Y'all got two calls and you better make them on the double. This is the city of crime. Those skinny lights. This is the city of crime. You better keep on to this town.
You're a dangerous mob, and it is our job to bust you all for being...
Wow.
That's a great music video, right?
Yeah.
From the people that brought you Fresh Prince and Bel Air comes this crappy soundtrack. That was one of those horrifying parts. I watched that video after we had our we watched the movie. I watched that video. I'm like, well, this is really bad.
Oh yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, so the sheepskin.
I think it's a consensus. The audience agrees. 2 thumbs way down.
So the sheepskin stuff is on their legs. I want to bring up how that seems. I believe that's a reference to the Masonic apron that's made out of the sheepskin, and that
that makes sense.
I knew Clint would pick up on that sheepskin. Go on, Clint.
Well, they sacrificed the woman to the serpent, and behind him there's giant banners that are red and black. That red and black is the colors of the dark side of masonry, basically, and that's why Hitler would use those colors.
The Nazis.
Same with the Soviets use the same colors.
But you know what? In the 80s, in the mid 80s, late 80s, as this movie's being made, the United States government and probably a bunch of other intelligence agencies are already involved in creating fake Nazi supremacist pagan witchcraft movements. You get this? Anybody
what we're talking about here, Todd. That's spot on.
Any group that's above 3 people by 1989, the government's already infiltrated them.
There's
you just described the process. I mean, this pagan Nazi cult, ritual human sacrifice movement, right?
Had all the best elements, exactly.
Yeah. It's like the mainstream in the 80s tried to play off the satanic panic, but there was real satanic criminal.
There probably was real stuff going on. Yeah, could hide it.
Well,
Clint, I have spells. I can fly.
There you go.
I'll play the clip for you. Tom Hanks said it himself.
Oh yeah. Well, so before the show started, I was telling you about how a lumberjack friend of mine, he there's a known area, I'm not gonna say the name, but where people were murdered or something. It's this campground, and like my friend's dad, who was a 32nd degree Mason, who's totally not superstitious, was like, oh yeah, there was witchcraft being practiced there. And then so my friend, who's a lumberjack, he was chopping down a tree or something in that area, and he said there was a marked tree in that there in that area. There was a number of infant skeletons found buried, and that there was a similar case, there was a similar incident in Arizona or New Mexico along the border. There was a
human sacrifices.
There was some kind of satanic movement where the state tried to make a bill to outlaw Satanism, or satanic practice, and for some reason the ADL stepped in, admitting that they were Satanists. But so that's a joke because they're all B'nai B'rith Masons. But
Okay.
so
Yeah,
there was
I
a,
admitted that, but okay.
well, this
they
ranch.
probably are. Yeah.
Well, this
It's
ranch
just
in
a
New
thing.
Mexico, the ranch in New Mexico had like 37 infant skeletons found and buried along this fence line. And,
Was that like right next to Jeffrey Epstein's property, or no? His
Down
compound,
the
or
street. Yeah,
I'm
down the
just
street.
curious. Was it
so-
anywhere near his
well, it's like
little
when
resort in the desert?
I was digging at the whatchamacallit, I found this manual. I think I sent it to JJ. It's a manual that was talking about occult criminal activities. And like there's these videos from back in the 90s and 80s where it was like there was all this crazy stuff going on in Hollywood with occult ritual magic, basically, and that people were all these prostitutes were claiming that they were people being sacrificed and so on and so forth, and that the it's like Hollywood has been a huge occult.
Well, you had
Yeah, never started.
McMartin incident where all the kids were claiming to be satanic, being used in satanic rituals or whatever, and that
even-
ties back into the Michael Aquino being accused and then suing California for accusing him or whatever. And
Oh, yeah. Well, Aquino was the head of Temple of Set for the audience sake.
what was funny is
Once
when
again, gents, we had McMartin you mentioned. We have the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez. We have the Roy Radin murders. We have the Mitch Warbell murder. We have the Cotton Club prosecution. This all went down underneath the watch of L.A. District Attorney Ira Reiner, personal friends with Charles Manson. I'm just saying.
wow,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Well, I
friend
think
of his.
Manson was. I think he was a government-controlled New World Order. Excuse me, not government, because our government's Constitution, not the New World Order. Yeah.
Not only that, he was deeply intertwined with the process. So once again,
Deeply.
yeah,
Deeply.
when we're talking about the satanic panic that you're mentioning, Clint, that there was actually satanic ritual human sacrifices going on, whether or not Tom Hanks could fly off the World Trade Center or not. But folks like Ira Reiner here were help perpetrating, guys who were prosecuting some of these cases, but help perpetrating these ideas that this shit's all bullshit, right? Because he's prosecuting the cases and diminishing them, right? The McMartin case is a great example of that.
Yeah, they're making light of
But
it.
he's an
when it's
inside
really a
guy.
tragedy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think he's related to Rob Reiner.
I never thought of that, but it's possible. I suppose I'll have to look.
I'd be
I
weird.
think Reiner's
if
a
it
pretty
was
common Jewish last
Yeah.
name, if I'm not mistaken.
Jewish German.
But it's worth looking.
Also, I forget what we were talking about a minute ago. This
We
show
were
is too
talking
good.
about how much Emil Muzz, the bodyguard driver from the pornographer Dragnet and the Dragnet film, looks like Bob Cocaine Evans, co-conspirator in Roy Radin's murder that happened underneath Ira Reiner's watch as a district attorney and didn't get
Very
prosecuted for 5 years, despite Reiner being the district attorney all 5 of those years during his 8-year period. And how much Emil Muzz looks like Bill Menser here. Again, at the time of
very
Dragnet,
strange.
Bill Menser might have went to the premiere for all I know. He might have been laughing. Hey, there I am on screen, right? He wasn't in jail
Holy
yet, right?
shit! Yeah, somebody
Yeah.
told him that's you, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he may have known that was him, right?
He might have been on the script. Yeah, he helped write part of it.
Yeah.
Here's what I'd
Again,
say.
He's in prison for multiple
He
murders.
knows.
He's probably murdered more folks
Holy
than that.
shit.
He goes back to the cult network in the 60s with Mama Cass in the
That is
process.
crazy.
He's
But it makes
alleged
sense. He lives there.
well, he's
You're out
alleged to
there.
be this. He's in the Ultimate Evil that came out in '87, right? The same year as Dragnet, I believe, is when it was published. I'll double check the original date. But when it came out in '87, when he's writing Manson 2, what do you think Maury Terry was thinking 2 years later when that Manson 2 got charged for the murder of Roy Raiden, the thing he'd already written a book about?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I've
And
been following that.
And Manson 2 was Mentor there was implicated in a lot of the Son of Sam murders as well. Not all of them, but a number of them, right? By David Berkowitz, right?
There was that claim that there was a national, a network.
Well, that's how Berkowitz knew about the death of Arliss Perry at Stanford University, because William Mincer is allegedly the one who told him that. Manson 2 there. He's allegedly the one who told Berkowitz that when they was out there for the Son of Sam meetings, right?
Yeah. I saw that list. You what show were you doing recently? You put the list up that Berkowitz, the people that were there, or Berkowitz wrote the people that he saw. Was that, you remember this show recently, JJ, where you signed that? He wrote it down by hand, the names.
Yes, sir. That was with Jonathan Mitchell. We'll be doing a follow-up on those conversations next Wednesday.
That was very interesting. Yeah. One of the names that stood out there was that Roy Cohn.
Roy Cohn.
Berkowitz saying Roy Cohn.
Herman
You're
Slater.
Like, God damn, that was weird.
Herman Slater, the guy that Dan Ackroyd seems to have modeled his bookshop after. Then you got, like I just said, William Mencer's on that list, right? He's again the guy Manson 2 supposedly, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, if this was an occult, if the occult was like bragging about that, but making this film, I don't think it's absurd to think that Mincer was at that premiere laughing about himself on the screen.
They think it's funny, when they probably killed somebody, they're like laughing. Look at this, they're making a movie. We're famous. We're cool.
Well, I wanted to add that scene.
See it.
That one magic shop you showed that the spelling of magic was MAGICK, and that's the because there's 3 different spellings of magic, and that the
Crowley, I choose the K.
Yeah, he was an OTO guy. But again, Berkowitz identified him as the process. But again, the process is OTO. So I mean, we're talking the same subject.
Well, if you're familiar with the declassified documents about magic with the UFO conspiracy, or I'm not sure if you've ever
talking about the MK12
like the
stuff?
aliens, MJ12 aliens.
Yeah, that's to do with MJ12 secret government. The
I'm familiar with it. Whether or not I believe it or not is probably a different story. But please continue, sir.
Well, so like that movement of the Robert Bob guy,
Bob.
I forget what
Bob Dobbs.
The name of that religion,
the Church of the Subgenius.
Yeah, that's it. So that group was highly involved in this theology that it was preaching about Jehovah One and UFOs and all this alien shit, and fucking it's like this the witchcraft and the occult Satanist movements seem to go hand in hand with these alien conspiracies, and it's very strange. It's like how Crowley was, he drew that guy that looked just like a quote unquote gray, and then Crowley was quoted as saying that they would call it something different in the future. And then,
sure. What you're describing is what I encompass and describe and summarize as ancient alien cargo cults. That thing that Crowley saw, that Lam, that was an alien. The process, they have their alien overlords. All of these Satanist groups as a result of being derivative from that original Satanist group with the alien stuff of being underneath the Thelemic umbrella, or the umbrella of Thelema, right? One of the organizations and offshoots of Thelema, the many they are, including Scientology, which then spawns the process. And again, Scientology's got their own galactic overlord in the form of Xenu.
Reminds me of Coneheads, where he's like, somebody's calling, the big head is calling, he's got to put his face in that thing. And
that's Dan Ackroyd, is it not? And a lot of times these folks like to play, they like to perpetrate these ideas through movies, right? So
definitely.
Yeah,
And
the
speaking
Lamb
of,
is like this super brain kind of big brain alien thing.
well, for sure. And speaking of how these things get made, so this is the guy. And speaking of folks like my favorite character, one of my favorite characters in life, Mr. Bob Cocaine Evans, not to be confused with Bob.
We're going to
the
be
Sausage
looking
King of Ohio,
for him
Evans.
everywhere now. We're going to be looking for him everywhere. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Sausage King of Ohio?
Nope.
oh, that's familiar.
Also named Bob Evans. That's what I like to differentiate.
Oh,
You don't know that guy.
Not only am I honoring a dead man's wishes by calling him Bob Cocaine Evans, I don't want folks to confuse him with quite possibly one of the greatest breakfast establishments in America, Bob, the Sausage King of Ohio, Evans.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the same guy.
Not the same guy.
One guy produced something people love. Another guy produced something that is people will cry ever after.
One guy does hood rat shit. One guy does hood rat shit with the process. The other guy makes delicious breakfast.
Exactly. So please don't confuse those two.
But
hey,
Bob
look
is the head of
sleazy.
Paramount.
Look at this. Look at those collars. Those like 4-inch collars they used to wear back then.
Well, he was a character, but so he was the head of Paramount. And he greenlit a lot of films, like one of his first projects with fellow process member Roman Polanski, Rosemary's Baby. This is the guy who greenlit Dragnet. His name's Tom Pollock.
Yeah, he wants this made.
Do you know before Tom Pollock took over? This is one of his first projects, if not his first. There, I think it was one of his first. I think it was the second or third.
Interesting.
Pollock. I wonder if he's from Poland or anywhere near that. Ancestry.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, probably. But
Eastern Europe. Yeah.
I think the most important factor to discern from this, though, Todd, is the time frame in which he took over the studio in which that film was produced. Right, he greenlit it immediately. It seems when he took over in 1980, early '86. Before he became the head of MCA,
had to make this thing.
It seems that way, does it not? It seems like it was much like I just said. Bob Cocaine Evans and Roman Polanski, the process fellows there, along with Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., yada yada yada, and Anton LaVey, the head of the Church of Satan, was present on the set as well as a technical advisor. They all made Rosemary's Baby.
Weird.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So that was one of Bob's first projects. So this guy.
Coincidence? Yeah, coincidence.
Yeah,
involved in one of the most haunted movies of all time, Rosemary's Baby. So many bad connections and bad juju and connected around that movie.
Yeah.
They got me. I'm back. I had a little coughing fit there.
Gave us a chance to highlight how evil Rosemary's Baby was, and amongst other things.
For sure. Well, then you got fellow process member John Lennon gets murked out on the steps of the same building that was filmed in, right? The Dakota building.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he gets killed by that CIA assassin. What's his name? I was going to bring that up earlier because I always get that guy confused.
You're talking about Mark David Chapman?
Yeah, he was the first book he ordered in prison was the
Catcher in the Rye.
No, The Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky.
Well,
gotcha.
I believe you had some Scientology connections before that, but I think what's also interesting is there's a fella who's been driving around America for like the last 30 years in a white van. On the side of it, it says Stephen King killed John Lennon. I believe he still has a website called this Stephen King killed John Lennon. He's been driving around handing out pamphlets trying to convince folks Stephen King killed John Lennon.
I think I heard of that a while back. I've heard of every single thing. Weird. Could have happened.
You never know. Stephen King, creepy son of a bitch. So this guy, he greenslights it, but before he took that job as the head of MCA Universal Studios there in early 86, like I said, he had a very prosperous career as he started an entertainment law firm. And he was very integral, as it says here on Wikipedia, the source of all information on the interwebs. It says right here,
you can trust all day long.
You can definitely trust it. It's at least a good jumping off point, Todd. Let's be fair. In
I hear
addition
you.
to the Star Wars franchise, Pollock was instrumental in initiating production of the Indiana Jones and Superman franchises. He was in deep with that whole Lucasfilm network. Back to Superman, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the what was there? Well, I wanted to say that the guy, if you go to the screen real quick, the I switched my screen.
Bob Dobbs?
Yeah,
That's
you
not
can
Bob
see.
Dobbs.
Well, not Bob Dobbs, but you can see the mask is supposed to be like the Baphomet of the Templarism, and the
Sure.
they're all it's interesting because they're all how are they saying in that but the idea of a sacrificial virgin, you know, in the occult orders, they drink blood and stuff, and that they were saying what they were throwing the woman in there to make a brew. Is what they were saying. So they were
Okay.
insinuating that they were going to drink it, and
Ugh.
So she's wearing
Totally.
white because she's
Totally.
a virgin, right?
Yeah. They continuously refer to her as the Virgin. Everyone calls her
stress
that.
They stress it.
Dan Ackroyd calls her that. Tom Hanks calls her that.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Well, if you think about it, really the dynamic between Hanks and Ackroyd in the film is again this reconciliation of opposites. You have the very straight-laced, Christ-like, Ackroyd, and the very, opposite of straight-laced and more of a embracing the flesh.
Loosen up, man. Loosen up. Dress like a woman. Dress up like a woman. You can sneak into college.
Well, that's
you got the do as thou wilt attitude of from Crowley with the Tom Hanks character, right? So again, it's them working together. It's this reconciliation of opposites.
Well, you know what's funny? It's funny. Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
Real quick.
JJ, the other day on another show of his was talking about how weird it was that that 12-year-old Brooke Shields was in the movies, right? Naked.
Oh, yeah, I was wrong, dude. She was 11. Oh, my bad. I was wrong. She was 11.
11, 12-year-olds in the movies naked. No one says anything, right?
No one batted an eye. They were like,
no one even gives a shit.
Not a big deal.
Who cares? Yeah. Holy shit.
Dude, she was in Playboy at the age of 12, naked. I've never seen it, but I've read the newspaper articles and the few folks that made us think about it back there. In
that was just natural. My wife's always saying kind of funny. In the 70s, here's all these male superstars. They're all old, ugly, bald guys that are like the male. They're supposed to be the sex symbols.
Dude, name one.
Kojak, Ironside, the guy in the wheelchair.
Okay.
Burt Reynolds, or not Burt Reynolds, the Maverick, whoever that guy, James Garner. James Garner.
Okay, yeah.
All these old guys, wrinkled faces, smoking cigarettes. It's like in the 70s, my wife's like, these were the sex symbols in the 70s? Holy shit, Kojak, bald guy.
Right.
Old bald guy.
I just saved this on Twixter today, right here, about Brooke Shields. Someone had posted on Twixter. I haven't looked at this article yet, but I think it's the one I read, just not read it in a print.
Wow, look at this.
Meet Terry and Brooke Shields. Brooks is 12. She poses nude. Terry is her mother. She thinks it's swell. This is one of the few articles about it. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think this is the only article from that period talking about it from the New York Magazine here. Again, you can find this in print on the interwebs, but this was the cover. I
Weird,
but wasn't
true.
Many folks that made us think about it, Todd. Folks were kind of okay with it.
Look the other way. Well, all the religions are hiding the abuse everywhere too. Now you've heard, oh yeah, they were hiding all these pedophile priests and pedophile bishops and all these cases, and they were hiding them the whole time and just moving them around. And wow.
Well, I strongly suspect she was a Scientologist because if you recall when she started taking postpartum drugs in the mid-aughts and Tom Cruise made a global affair of the situation, I
Brooke Shields
decided, I was like, well, Yeah. She had some problems with postpartum depression after a child, and she ended up taking some drugs. And Tom Cruise had a full-blown conniption fit. And I figured, why is Tom Cruise so concerned about this unless she's a Scientologist?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
They are weird about that.
He
Danny Masterson, when he was coming up on his incident, they gathered around and tried to get rid of the people that were coming against Danny Masterson, supposedly.
Yeah, that whole
sure.
cast of that TV show is all Scientologists.
And I agree for sure, Clint. And when we're talking about harassing folks, that's the Guardian's office, their OSA office. There used to be the Guardian's office of Scientology. That's the forward operation of spook and nefarious operations. The real bagman ops go in their dark wing here, the process. So that's my opinion, but that's where
another actress, Leah Remini, that turned against Scientology.
Well,
she's got the whole, or did she? I mean, she's got some TV series telling her. I have no idea.
Well, so
I have no idea
about so this lady in the movie.
I just watched listen to some bizarre.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
I don't know what to buy. I don't know what to buy nowadays. To tell you the truth.
Well, if you go on her website, if you go on Leah Remini's website, she recommends you donate to the Best Friends Animal Society, aka the Process Church of the Final.
Wow, it's full circle.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Yeah.
So in the movie, if you go back to the screenshot, I changed the screen. That lady that was in cahoots with the priest. Do you think do you think she was based on a real person like all these other people?
The police commissioner,
the city mayor, or that police commissioner?
Yeah.
What is she?
She's the police
commissioner. Okay, yep, there you go. That's Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, there.
Yeah, it does look a lot like Nancy Pelosi, does it not? Holy shit!
Yeah, the passion bill, the reader, yeah.
They're all related.
Well, they're an extension of the Getty family, so we're not far off as far as cult networks in Los Angeles. Right?
Spooky.
No, it looks a lot like her. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's a specific individual, an amalgamation of the fact that they have their people in power, right? So you have, like I was pointing out, Ira Reiner, right? He was the district attorney for 8 years, from 84 till 92. Like I said, Reagan got murdered in December of 83, so he would have been overlooking that case during the time whether or not to do anything about it, right? So
yeah,
if you look at the OJ case, Marcia Clark, she was married, the prosecutor, the assistant deputy DA under Reiner, right? Reiner just left office, but she worked for Reiner for 8 years, right?
Yeah.
She was married to a high-ranking Scientologist at the time, an OT7 guy who was an executive of the church, not just the lay.
Weird.
Yeah.
So that could be something like that, right? I mean, they got their people on the inside.
I was going to say, in this movie, where they go to the Playboy Mansion, the imitation of the Playboy Mansion, whatever that, that mansion is. That looks like it is. It looks like it's that Lookout Mountain. It looks like it's fucking Laurel Canyon.
Well, that is where you have to live. That's what I was saying. I think it's an amalgamation of pornographers there, and that is probably the aspect of Hefner, right? Is the Playboy Mansion there up there in the hills?
Yeah, so they're showing you the pagans and the pornographers and the devil worshippers and the process church. This guy, Christopher Plummer, he looks perfect. Process church, where Jesus is the devil, and
he's both.
Yeah,
he's both.
To the mystery schools,
the leader of the light, right?
Yeah, to the mystery schools, the light is Lucifer, and the darkness is Adonai.
Well, and not only that, he's orchestrating all the hood rat shit, is he not? He's the head of this cult organization. He's the one who's doing all the fighting pornography by day, but creating all the pornography by night.
Yeah,
another hood
the Ordo KO system.
Yeah.
Wasn't there an acronym for?
And they justify it that they're cleaning up. They justify it. They're cleaning up.
You got to clean up these streets, Todd. These streets
that's how they clean it up, by setting people up.
Oh, yeah.
Set you up, give you the drugs, and bust you, and then make money off a house in you. Doesn't that sound like
the process? That's the process, Todd.
That is the process.
Thomas Pynchon told the story of exactly what you're describing in the film, or in the story that was later made into a film by Paul Thomas Anderson, Inherent Vice. And they describe literally in that storyline, Pynchon does, how this cult in Los Angeles is getting the folks addicted to heroin. They're trafficking in the heroin. They're getting them addicted to the heroin. They're running dental services to repair their teeth. They're sending them to rehab services in the spiritual center, like the Esalen type center, Esalen place there. And then they're, healing them, and then they get them back on the drugs because it's all part of the process. We're just going to cycle them back through.
The process.
Totally. That's what our whole country's going through right now.
So they keep the crackheads in the streets.
The medical, the insurance, the processing of your.
Well, Pynchon wrote in the whole Manson story into that whole storyline because it takes place during the time of the trials, or just immediately thereafter.
Well, the intelligence agencies after World War II, they were fighting the communists, but they're funding the communists.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're
and
no, you're right. They're doing both sides. Right.
There's this whole game they play.
Old Jesus Angleton, huh? That was Danny Castellero's childhood neighbor. Did you know that?
Oh, that's weird.
I did not know that.
Yeah, his dad was
Angleton.
His dad was involved in Iran Contra. Danny Castellero was really investigating his father, if you ask me. But
makes sense.
James Jesus Angleton. Yeah.
He's the one that was found suicided, unalived. Danny Castellero, that was found the octopus or whatever he called it.
Yep.
I was looking at stuff back then at that time. That was pretty spooky period. Back in the when this movie is taking place, 87, this is also when Iran Contra is breaking.
Excellent.
The fact that we're doing drugs, guns, so there's big story breaking in the background, and they can schmooze it over with this movie. A number of other things that are happening are Pat Robertson is going to run for president in 1988. So this movie comes out in 87, and then a bunch of religious leaders get taken down. Jim Baker and Jimmy Swaggart, which is just enough to knock Pat Robertson out of any kind of run for president. People don't trust religious leaders at that time. It shined such a bad light on these fake televangelists at that period.
Well, what's in Ronnie in office at that point, like 87?
Who?
That Red Ronnie, the
80 to 88, right.
Well, he was president from 80 to 88. Yep, and George Bush would win the presidency in 88, running against Michael Dukakis, and this movie probably all helped to. I don't know.
Well,
go ahead and finish. Todd, what do you got there, bud? You're on to something.
This movie helped put the nail in the coffin of conservative Christian fucking televangelist power.
There you go. And that's precisely how Ronnie Reagan got elected governor in California. If you look at all the satanic cult activity specifically around the process and line it up with old Ronnie Reagan getting elected, there's something to be said there. And he's not that far.
Took him out. Took him out, and then everybody thought it was ridiculous if you were even conservative.
Well,
you might as well let it all hang out,
Well,
that's what gave him the green light.
It's literally what we're talking about with Dragnet. The politicians are controlling both sides. It's the same shit we're talking about here. So just insert
Dan Ackroyd is like the too stiff collared. He's too uptight, right? It isn't until the end of the movie that he realizes maybe I can have sex. He's like a virgin too.
I'm trying to frame Ronnie Reagan in the framework of the politicians we see involved in the cult and Dragnet. And to elaborate on that point even further, according to the work of author Ed Sanders, he's of the opinion that Ronnie Reagan's opponent was a member of the process, a man who would also become governor on, I believe, 3 separate terms.
Jerry Brown.
Oh, yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Jerry Moonbeam Brown, old boyfriend of Linda Ronstadt and Laurel Candy Knight himself.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't doubt
he had to be involved in everything.
So Bush Sr., he was. It's interesting that this guy is involved on the screen. That he's involved in this cocaine ring, because Bush Senior and Bush Junior were both heavily involved in the cocaine rings, and that the the smuggling.
Yeah,
of the
Southeast Asia, all the heroin coming out of Southeast Asia too.
Yeah,
was coming in through up through the cocaine through South America, all the drug routes. Every time they said every time they looked into where the drugs are coming from, the CIA's footprints were when they investigate, they were just leaving. The CIA's always involved with all the cocaine and the heroin and religious.
When is it not the CIA, Todd?
Yeah,
exactly.
What's like
the mind control.
They use these cult networks as a front because look, if you need folks to run drugs for you, you need folks who use drugs. That helps out too with the whole network. You get folks who have unscrupulous ethics, right? Well, that's the whole Satanism, right? It's the idea of Satanism is these people are ethically compromised. They're into the drug, sex, and rock and roll aspect. They're perfect folks to incorporate into your network.
Yeah, in the movie, they go to this pagan Baphomet festival or whatever, and there's a guy with a tray with all these different colored pills, and Tom Hanks jokingly grabs a bunch of them and puts them in his pocket.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He's the dark side. He's the reconciliation.
Yeah, look at this classic image of Satan or whatever the hell he was.
Christopher Plummer.
At the end of it,
that's Christopher Plummer, classic.
So at the end of the movie, Tom Hanks admits that he's wearing his old lady's underwear.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, it's cool, man. Right. I'm wearing my old lady's underwear. Hey. Tom Hanks is let it all hang out.
Well, that's a good point of the whole do out thou wilt kind of reconciliation of opposite stuff we're talking about with these characters in the film.
Yeah. Well, it was weird.
Remember, Tom Hanks played a guy dressing up as a girl before this movie in college, so he's being stereotyped now as a guy that wears girls' underwear, and it's cool. Everybody,
played a guy playing another guy who's playing a different guy.
We'll check this out though. So Tom Hanks goes. He follows his partner, his last name happens to be Friday, which I thought was weird.
Joe Friday.
Yes, Friday as in the Venus, but like so he follows his partner. His partner's picking up his grandma or whatever, and then all of a sudden Tom Hanks
is his grandma's name Monday.
Yeah, that's another thing that I thought was strange.
Yeah, grandma
Monday. Well, also Dan Ackroyd in real life was he's a reserve sheriff or whatever, or some shit for like Louisiana, but like
are you sure that's not Steven Seagal?
Yeah, I was reading up on it today a little bit just to
Steven Seagal and Dan Ackroyd are both law enforcement officers in Louisiana.
Yeah,
do not go to Louisiana.
Do not go near Louisiana after this show.
Well, it's funny because he does that other movie where he's the judge with the nose, but like so
nothing but trouble.
Yeah, but
love that show.
The movie, it's like Tom Hanks picks up Dan Aykroyd's grandma, like, oh, you ever ride on the back of a motorcycle, you know?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it jumps scene and he's in bed with this woman that's an LAPD lady. It's like, well, what the hell? It just kind of jumps scenes there. Really,
he's slandering about, isn't he? That old Tom Hanks in that film.
The part I didn't realize was so tragic was when this movie's being made and Tom Hanks is playing this up and coming young detective or whatever the fuck he's supposed to be in the movie. He's screwing these gorgeous girls.
Right, Todd. Pep
Strebeck. Everyone should know his name is Pep Strebeck, which is a very weird name. I bet it's an anagram of something not good.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I thought of that. I thought that is not a natural name. That's something they've done an anagram on.
Yeah,
but anyways, Tom Hanks plays this young detective that's hitting all the hot young women. And the unfortunate part about this that I just found out this week is at the same time he's playing this in the movie, this is occurring in real life because he's divorcing his first wife, leaving her behind because he's become a big star now. And maybe he should have left her behind, but his poor daughter is writing a book now about the horrible stuff that she suffered after Tom Hanks
well,
abandoned his family, and the mother went not
No,
supposedly
this is his
according to the
first wife.
daughter,
This is
and
not Deborah Winger. You're talking about Colin Hanks' mother, right?
Tom Hanks's wife.
Right.
Yeah.
You're talking about his son's mother, the actor's mother, right? His first son's mother, Colin Hanks' mother.
Tom Hanks's daughter has written a book describing what happened after Tom Hanks
Right.
left the family to make movies in Hollywood and then divorced the
Right. That's what I'm
mother.
saying. That's Colin Hanks' mother. Now, have you ever met his other son from
Colin
Deborah Winger?
Hanks. No, I'm not familiar with that.
Chet Hanks.
Maybe
He's a-
not.
He's a white rapper.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Yeah, I don't think I.
He's a character.
Chet Hanks.
His name's Chet.
Nope, haven't heard of that.
I want to point out how Tom Hanks, a lot of his early roles, he always seemed to play the fool, just like the tarot card. Like, because the occult they always assign people kind of titles that are synonymous
Yeah,
with the tarot
They're
card.
likable. They're likable. The fool's likable. God blesses children and fools, or whatever. There's that old saying.
Who? What is it? What's this saying?
God blesses fools or children and drunks. I don't know how it goes. I forget what the saying is.
Well, so
God
Steven
God
Seagal-
watches out for fucking fools, and
There's a fool for you.
You see,
Chet Hanks.
the fool card is the fool is getting ready to step off the cliff on the tarot card, the fool. And he's got a dog nipping at his heels.
Yeah.
Wow, is that Tom Hanks's kid?
That's Chet Hanks.
Yeah.
His kid.
Yes, sir. With his second wife, Deborah Winger, the actress Deborah Winger.
Oh, yeah.
That would be half sibling to the character, the girl you're talking about, the daughter you're talking about.
Oh, wow.
Well, I wanted to add to the fool thing. The fool tarot
He's
card.
Doesn't look
Dude,
like
don't be
there's any.
mistaken. Chet Hanks.
Looks like a
He might
perfectly
look
normal
like Malibu's
person.
Most Wanted. He might look like Malibu's Most Wanted, but he's gangster.
Well, so the I bet you
Hey,
I
a
can do
perfectly
that, but-
fine gentleman. Yeah.
So I put
perfectly
quite a few
fine
people in a
gentleman, yeah.
headlock, and but anyways, so the tarot card, the fool, it's consider it as it's the number 0. So and it's the uninitiated, and then the number 1 card is the magi or whatever. So the first degree. And that because there's all these secret colleges, secret schools, and societies, they all have degrees of initiation. And so, certain people in the movie may represent a degreed person of sorts.
Sure.
Like this guy right here would be he's obviously one of the scapegoats, so he's going to be a lesser degreed individual.
He's going to represent like an authoritarian, something you're going to run into a solid block. He's a authority or whatever, that character.
He's not in the film, but what does this guy represent?
Man, this guy looks like David Hasselhoff if you put that fucking Camaro behind him or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I would say he represents cocaine, but please continue.
Oh, I hear you. I mean, I'm probably putting a good spin on him. Anyways, back to the movie. I know there's a couple other points I had to make for this.
That guy, that guy was Biller's hookup.
Are you saying you want to watch the rap song again? Is that what you're saying? I'll play it. I'll play it.
In the City of Angels. On this particular occasion, we happen to witness a pagan ritual in progress. See that, Streamek? We're just in time. We have stumbled into a major crime.
They got the girl off right. Now that's not nice. I think she is the subject of a sacrifice.
Buddy, we're putting this party on ice.
But first, we really ought to read them their rights.
Read them their rights. Read them their rights.
Well, I'm here tonight to rap about your rights. Cause right now you're in trouble. Don't have to say nothing at all. Y'all got 2 calls and you better make them on the double. This is the city of crime. So stand alive. This is the city of crime. You better be on this time. all for being.
Singing in the background. Sound like Gene Simmons or something playing on the singing. City and crime. That's horrible. That is some of the worst.
Choreograph that?
Oh, who choreographed that? Son of a bitch.
Paul Abdul.
Oh, I think I heard that. Yeah, she taught him how to dance. I read that. I'm like, no.
Yeah, Ackroyd's out there cutting a rug, Paul Abdul style. In that.
You know,
she was pretty huge
when
in
I
the 80s.
when I watch that movie, I'm like, look, it's the exact same song they played in Beverly Hills Cop. You know, they all had that same synthesizer, crappy synthesizer music.
Yeah,
I love it.
Gross.
Great movie.
Gross.
Great movie. Well,
looked like they had Run DMC. Looked like they had Run DMC doing their rap, or Prince of Bel Air, Fresh Prince of Bel Air, doing their rap.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time here. I'd like to bring this fun-filled, exciting occult and/or esoteric review of the 1987 cinematic masterpiece Dragnet here to a close. But I'd like to turn over to you gents each for taking as much time as you need. Any closing thoughts or statements on the film, or any closing thoughts or statements on the discussion, and or closing thoughts or statements on anything. Could even be anything about Bob Cocaine Evans. Anything you want to say about him? Or any other
See if I missed anything.
That's why he's got the Chinatown poster, because he's running that white China.
Do you want to go first?
That doesn't matter to me.
Me neither.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Flip a coin, because I'm.
Well,
or whatever.
You know how to do rock, paper, scissors.
Anyway, I appreciate you bringing us on tonight, JJ. That was so much fun.
Are you
Man, you can go on for
a game of rock, paper, scissors?
Forfeiting? No, I always win.
Oh,
even if I lose, I win. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Can I help you guys out? Do we need to play like some Mad Libs or Ad Libs? What are we doing here?
We do whatever you'd like to do. I just appreciate you inviting us on here tonight.
You just let me know what thought comes to your mind here.
Okay, on that film, there was Dan Ackroyd's jacket. If you look through that movie,
yep,
he's got these emblems on his jacket. One of them's the Union Jack when he dresses up like a punk rocker.
There you go.
Yeah.
He's got the Union Jack.
Oh, we
British
got that image on the screen. I forgot you
Church.
can't see, Todd. Yeah, we got that image on the screen right now. What are you saying about the jacket and the badges?
He's got that Process Church Union Jack English connection. And then he's got the skull and bones that looks just like how the Skull and Bones skull looks on their emblem. If you look at Skull and Bones. And then I wanted to say they had there was a part where the car blows up. You know where they did the car bombing in the movie? That reminded me of when they go to get in the car and it blows up in front of them. You know what was occurring right then was the Mark Hoffman bombings with the Mormon church was going on.
Oh.
So there was assassinations going on in a weird way. Assassinations in Salt Lake I'm closely connected to because I had a cult shop there where I sold books. In the back parking lot, there was Mark Hoffman blew some guy up that owned in a strip mall. Mark Hoffman.
There was like 3 bombings there, wasn't there, during that stretch there? The 4 bombings.
Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm.
Domestic
when that Mark
bombings
Hoffman
in the early
went
80s,
down,
right?
I wasn't there at the time, but we moved into a shop where that had just occurred, where he was taking out people or whatever.
Well, yeah. When did that was like 84, 85, right?
Yeah.
Yes, would you believe that speaking of occult bookstores, that one that raised occult bookstore, like I said, that Ackroyd based his off of the Magical Child? Would you believe that Mark Hoffman very likely visited that same bookstore, frequented that same bookstore?
That is insane. That is crazy. So Mark Hoffman And wasn't Heidi, you and Heidi talking about how Mark Hoffman stopped talking?
Yeah, well, me and Heidi Love from the Unfiltered Rise podcast are going to do some more of these discussions on the Hoffman situation, the bombings, and the Salamander letter. But yes, she's got some interesting theories around why Hoffman stopped talking, for sure.
Yeah, I looked into that case deep, and it is deeply weird. It is crazy. So there was that. I had to make an observation on it. And the police tank in that movie. The police tank drives through the building, and it looks cool. That was the first time Hollywood's like introducing you to the police ramming down your walls with a militarized tank.
Yeah,
before that,
too.
Yeah, without a warrant. Before that, police drove up in cars, knocked on your doors. How you doing, ma'am? But then they were starting to talk you into tanks driving through your walls in the middle of the night. So they were militarizing the police with this. The whole thing. Oh, there was a weird thing where he had a TV on his watch. Do you remember this part in the movie? This tripped me out.
Real.
TV watches? I'm like, I don't remember TV watches in 87.
Oh, it's a real watch.
But maybe there was a fucking. Maybe there was one. I don't remember having one of those fuckers.
If you notice in the movie, there's a wire coming out of the watch, which has it had like a portable battery attached to it that was larger.
So they were kind of introducing you to some weird shit. Oh, the last scene with the you remember in the end of the movie? I can kind of see it, but what are we looking at?
That's the tank you were describing.
Oh yeah, the tank.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last scene.
Have a nice day.
One thing in the movie that was so funny in the very end, remember it tells you that what happens to everybody at the end. It types them out on the movie screen. At the end of the movie, it shows you what happens to everybody. One of the funniest parts is it's in the last scene. It says with the reverend, the reverend that orchestrated all the shit. It says
Jonathan Worley.
He got 99 to life sentences, so he'll be available for parole in 3 years. Parole in 3 years.
Yeah.
So the movie ends with him getting convicted for 99 life sentences, but he'll be eligible for parole in 3 years, making fun of the real system.
He should have hired Bob Evans' attorney, Robert, and OJ's attorney, Robert Shapiro. He would have walked.
Totally. He wouldn't even have to do 3 years.
Yeah, Bob said cocaine trafficking. I'm just going to go ahead and not do any jail time, fellas. How about that?
So no, that's about everything I got, JJ. Thank you so much for inviting me on. That was so fun, man. I love your brain. I love your show. Clint, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for everything tonight, guys.
I appreciate the kind word, Todd. I also appreciate you joining me here tonight to get a little GCD, and I appreciate your perspective here on the 1987 cinematic masterpiece, Dragnet.
Oh, yeah. I got a good screenshot for you for the end.
You got an ending screenshot?
Yeah.
Boom.
Dun, dun, dun,
dun, dun, dun, dun, dun, dun, dun.
Well, they tell you right in the intro, right? The story, we've changed the names, but these are true events. We've changed the names to protect the innocent. I don't know. Again, that must be a very subjective term. They're innocent, but I do agree they have changed the names, and these are true events.
Totally.
Yeah, just like the TV show or the precursors that were more serious, they said the same thing at the beginning.
Oh, like the old FBI show?
Yeah, there was a Dragnet from like 1950s or something.
Yeah, there was a show called the FBI from back then too. The technical consultant on it was Mark Felt, the guy who's largely been blamed for being deep throat in the Watergate affair, the former deputy director of the FBI, Mark Felt.
Oh, interesting.
Crazy.
Yeah, the Watergate thing was crazy. That building was owned by the Vatican, that Watergate Hotel.
That I'm not surprised by.
Well, and that whole thing with on the movie, there was a Catholic. He's not specifically Catholic, but he has a Catholic kind of collar going to the priest in the movie. So he's not. They don't make him out as a Catholic, but it has that Knights of Malta kind of feel to him.
I do agree with you on that. It does come off that way, at least.
Yeah.
kind of a weird, we're doing it for the good of everybody, you know, kind of like Gladio
You don't believe
operation
him?
or some shit.
Yeah.
You don't believe him?
I do believe them.
It's like that whole idea of the light versus dark, Lucifer versus Adonai or whatever. It's like picture like the pagans is the temple of the temple of the Pan, or the damn it, I can't think of the other name.
You're saying Pam?
Pan, like Pan.
Pam?
Pan.
P-A-N? Okay.
Yeah, so the temple of Pan or Samael, or the brotherhood of Cain versus the brotherhood of Lucifer, or the light bearer, or it's just like the whole thought versus desire thing, how it was so prevalent in the movie, with the church being the thought and the desire being the pagans, and on a micro level of Ackroyd being thought and Tom Hanks being desire, the the symbolism.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting before we get off here that the
Where you
movie
going?
was portraying these that you can't trust the religious figures because they're in bed with the pornographers, and Jim Baker and Jimmy
Well, I think they're just
Swaggart,
bragging about it, right? They're just really just bragging about it.
but they were taking them down a notch too.
Yeah.
They
Well,
were
I think
setting
all
up.
you know who's in
They were
charge.
setting up. Yeah, they were setting up battle lines.
Yeah, Bob. It's Bob, not Dobbs, but Bob Cocaine Evans. Although Bob Dobbs and his alien ion might be in charge. Who knows? I don't know what goes on in this world anymore.
I have to go dig into that Bob Dobbs thing a little closer. I remember reading about that
I'll send
stuff.
you some links. I'll send you some. We
Yeah,
can do a
send them.
future show on that. I'd like to hear your thoughts. You know a lot about the subject.
Definitely. But thank
Well,
you, gentlemen.
Well, hold on, real quick, as I close out here with let Clint finish his thoughts real quick. You're showing that badge. Have you all seen the LA County Sheriff's badge?
Oh yeah, the symbol, right? Of the FBI released that thing of the pedophile symbols that were used by
like that one right there.
Yeah, that one.
Well, like that one right there, does it not?
Yeah. Well, you can also find it in the Vatican wardrobe and stuff.
And to be fair, the FBI did not release this, Clint. Not to correct you, sir, but WikiLeaks released this. And folks
what is that?
WikiLeaks.
What are we looking at right there?
It's a spiraled triangle that's a symbol of some kind of sex cult. That
this is a badge. Report. This is a badge that they would wear.
Well, this is a 2007 FBI report from talking about the symbols that pedophile networks use, right? And that triangle symbol used for boy lover is seen here on the LA County Sheriff's Department badge as well. Clint was showing LAPD, Los Angeles City PD badge. I said, "You ever seen the county badge?" I mean, a little suspect.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. There's an interesting thing about the badges and because some of them have a 7-point star, and the word itself, sheriff, how old it is, and it goes back to the old systems of England and stuff, and the well, it's hard to explain.
Constitutional sheriffs
but it's like the
constables.
See, it reminds me of my friend that was a Catholic who couldn't get a job as a cop, even though he was an outstanding person, and that once I found the Masonic conspiracy and that all the cops are Masons, all the judges, all the lawyers, all these people in this movie are probably all Masons. Maybe not Dan Ackroyd.
Not Bob Cocaine Evans. Say it ain't so, Clint.
He's moving that white china from Chinatown.
See the ring on there? That 33rd degree.
He's going around breaking Superman's back.
Kryptonite.
Don't tell him. You tell him it was a horse. You tell him a horse knocked you off, motherfucker.
Right?
P Diddy, early P Diddy.
It was really Manson too, is what you're saying. I like it. I like the theory.
Yeah. It's like these people.
Go ahead.
The amount of shadiness that goes on in high echelons of society and culture is, through the roof. The meter's just, going crazy on that shit, and
You can't imagine, yeah.
they're all getting away with it because all these judges and the highest authorities and prosecutors, they're all members of the same clubs and fucking, it's like we're living in this world of classism where but all the classes are invisible to us, but not to those who are initiated into the secret brotherhoods. The whole
the spooky part of that, Clint, what you're talking about is they're starting to try to program this stuff into algorithms that will dole out how the computer will deal with everyone soon.
Oh, yeah. Well, they've got everybody brainwashed into algorithms. All these people
fellas, you're describing a Philip K. Dick nightmare, and this is an entirely separate conversation, fellas.
Exactly.
Clint, do you have any final words for the Dragnet show here this evening? I do appreciate both of y'all's time and expertise here, or perspective. I'm sorry, in the occult and esoteric review.
Oh yeah, I would definitely keep an open mind about these occultists and the movies. There's so many movies that are so familiar with court cases and all sorts of stuff, and that you got to remember that Hollywood doesn't make original ideas. They rebrand and recycle everything they could possibly.
Everything.
It's like when the FBI investigates
movies, music,
rappers.
Nothing new.
Hold on. It's like when the FBI investigates rappers and shit, trying to hear the rappers say some dirt in their song. Like, oh, we got him. The same thing with these Hollywood people. They're putting the dirt in the movies because they can't think of an original idea. So they're just, let's take a real life scenario and just turn it into a movie and fucking.
That's pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate.
I think there's signs they're moving out of Hollywood myself. I think there's signs that the power structure is moving out of there, realizing everyone's on to them. I mean, all these people do is move on to the next place where they can take advantage of everybody. Once people get onto them.
What you're saying is the jig is up, the news is out, we finally found you.
Something like that.
Yeah,
the Hollywood years of the process shenanigans, obviously
kind of hard to pull the wool. Yeah,
destroying the fabric of society from every angle. If you ask me, these satanic elements of the Hollywood culture, largely focused in and around one of my favorite people in life, not to be confused with the King of Sausage King of Ohio, Mr. Bob Cocaine Evans.
Oh yeah, we're gonna keep him on our radar. Is he still alive? Is he still alive, or is he in prison?
Well, he should have been. Thank goodness he is now deceased. He is now
deceased. He's deceased.
Did the Mormons get him with that spell that they cast after death?
He lived to be an old man, and I won't discuss
the old man spell.
I won't discuss the audience or you gentlemen of some of the sick tales that my understanding of the sexual proclivities of old Bob Cocaine Evans into his late 80s there in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles. The City of Angels, they call it the City of Demons.
In the Hollywood Nights, Bob Seger.
I disagree with Randy Newman. I do not love L.A. So I appreciate both of your gents the time this evening.
Right on, JJ.
And I look forward to future discussions over there at the Third World Assassin YouTube channel there with both you gents, Clint and Todd. I recommend folks check that out. And got some more Process Church, specifically Son of Sam related stuff coming up next Wednesday here in Operation GCD Live with guest Jonathan Mitchell. And got another Fridays coming up this week with Nick from the Occult Rejects. We co-host there on Fridays, 9 p.m. Eastern times, and got a guest, BT Wallace, host of the Truth and Shadow podcast. Very sharp dude. I really enjoy conversations there, so recommend check those out too. And I appreciate y'all joining me for the review here. I enjoyed y'all's perspectives, and I have to say, after watching this again, the comedy in this film, despite everything I can say about it negatively and all the process related stuff I've discussed here and the points you all have made, the comedy still plays. I mean, it's still kind of fun. I laughed at times,
Totally.
It's
totally.
There's still some humor.
It's worth it.
So,
thanks, JJ. Appreciate the time, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So fun. Anytime.
And if you guys don't watch out, I'll play that rap music video again if you don't watch out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, well, check your six. Look in that garbage can, because you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.